What if Muzan Kibutsuji succeeded in his most devastating plan and transformed all 9 Hashira into demons in a single night? This is a complete timeline rewrite of Demon Slayer, where humanity's greatest protectors become its worst nightmares. The Demon Slayer Corps collapses within 1 month. The Entertainment District arc never happens because Demon Tengen hunts his own wives. Hashira training becomes a nightmare where the strongest Demon Slayers hunt their former students. The Infinity Castle battle never occurs because Muzan has already won. Instead, witness 8 sagas spanning 4 months of humanity's darkest hour, where Demon Rengoku's eternal flames burn through safe houses, where Demon Gyome's faith wars against corruption, and where Tanjiro becomes the boy who can save demons by proving that even Muzan's blood curse can be broken. This is the complete story of an impossible hope burning when all seems lost. The divergence point begins immediately after Mugen Train, on the night Muzan makes his move. Saga 1: The Hashira Fall and Corps Collapse. The Demon Slayer Corps had stood as humanity's shield against demons for over 1,000 years, and at the heart of this ancient organization stood its 9 pillars, the Hashira. These exceptional warriors represented the absolute pinnacle of demon-slaying ability, each one capable of single-handedly protecting entire regions from demonic threats that would overwhelm dozens of ordinary slayers. The title of Hashira wasn't merely a rank, but a testament to years of brutal training. Countless battles survived, and either 50 demon kills as a Kino rank slayer or the defeat of one of Muzan's 12 Kizuki. Most slayers trained 5 years or more just for a chance at this elite status, and many died trying. Each Hashira mastered a unique breathing style, ancient techniques passed down through generations that allowed human warriors to match demonic strength and regeneration through enhanced physical capabilities and devastating sword techniques. Giyu Tomioka, the water Hashira, moved with fluid precision that made his blade seem to flow like a river through his enemies. Shinobu Kocho, the insect Hashira, compensated for her smaller frame and inability to decapitate demons with deadly wisteria-based poisons that could kill demons from within. Kyojuro Rengoku, the flame Hashira, embodied passionate dedication with techniques that burned like wildfire through the darkness. Tenjin Uzui, the sound Hashira, combined his shinobi background with explosive techniques that made the battlefield itself a weapon. Mitsuri Kanroji, the love Hashira, wielded her unique flexible blade with impossible speed and strength despite her cheerful demeanor. Obanai Iguro, the serpent Hashira, employed serpentine movements and his constant companion Kaburamaru to track and eliminate targets. Sanemi Shinazugawa, the wind Hashira, brought raw aggression and his rare Marechi blood that drove demons into feeding frenzies. Gyome Himejima, the stone Hashira and oldest of the group, wielded his unique chained weapon with both tremendous physical strength and deep spiritual conviction. Muichiro Tokito, the mist Hashira, had achieved his rank in just 2 months despite his youth, his prodigious talent allowing him to master techniques that took others decades. Beyond their individual strength, the Hashira formed the command structure of the Corps, second only to Kagaya Ubuyashiki, the kind but terminally ill leader whose family had dedicated themselves to demon extermination for generations. The Hashira's responsibilities extended beyond combat. They trained the next generation, investigated demon activity in their assigned territories, and protected the Corps' infrastructure, including the hidden swordsmith village. Their relationships varied from Mitsuri's warm friendships to Giyu's isolated distance, from the mutual respect between Gyome and Kyojuro to the tension between Sanemi and Giyu, but all shared an unshakable dedication to protecting humanity. When called to biannual Hashira meetings at the Ubuyashiki mansion, they put aside personal differences to coordinate the war against demons. The Corps itself numbered in the hundreds, with cultivators training new recruits, Kakushi providing medical support and logistics, and swordsmiths forging the special Nichirin blades that could kill demons. This entire structure rested on the foundation of the Hashira's strength. Remove them, and the entire organization would crumble like a house built on sand. Muzan Kibutsuji, the progenitor of all demons who had evaded death for 1,000 years, understood this perfectly. He had spent centuries methodically killing Hashira through his upper-ranked demons, knowing that each pillar removed weakened humanity's defense. But never had he attempted what he was about to do, because the opportunity had never presented itself until now. The emergency Hashira meeting had been called under urgent circumstances. CMNIA, reports of unusual demon activity across multiple regions suggested a coordinated attack was imminent, and Kagaya needed his pillar's counsel. All 9 Hashira answered the summons without hesitation, gathering at the Ubuyashiki mansion on a moonless night that should have felt safe within the corp's headquarters. They couldn't have known that Muzan himself had orchestrated every report, manipulated every sighting, created every false lead, specifically to gather all 9 pillars in one location. The Demon King had waited centuries for an opportunity like this, and he had prepared meticulously. The meeting took place in the mansion's main hall, the Hashira seated in their traditional positions as Kagaya addressed them from his place at the front, his wife Amane at his side. Gyomei's hands were clasped in prayer, tears streaming down his scarred face as always. Sanemi and Obanai sat close together, the two having formed a grudging friendship. Mitsuri kept glancing at Obanai with barely concealed affection, while Shinobu maintained her gentle smile. Giyu sat apart from the others as usual, his expression unreadable. Kyojiro's passionate energy was barely contained even in this formal setting, while Tenjin lounged with his characteristic flamboyance. Young Muichiro seemed to drift in and out of attention, his mind wandering as it often did. These 9 warriors represented humanity's greatest hope, masters of their respective breathing styles, survivors of countless battles. Not one of them sensed the trap until it was too late. The attack came with brutal efficiency. The mansion's walls exploded inward simultaneously from 4 directions as upper moon demons crashed through, Kokushibo from the north, Doma from the east, Akaza from the south, and Nakime's dimensional portals opening from the west. But the upper moons weren't there to fight. They were there to restrain and distract while Muzan himself materialized in the center of the hall, moving faster than even Hashira eyes could track. His body rippled and split into multiple forms, each one targeting a different Hashira with whip-like appendages that had been cultivated specifically for this moment, enhanced with concentrated demon blood beyond anything he'd ever created before. The Hashira reacted instantly despite the shock, hands moving to their swords, breathing styles already activating. Gyomei's chains began to spin as he called upon stone breathing. Sanemi's blade sang free, with wind breathing beginning to howl around him. Giyu's water breathing started to flow. Kyojiro's flames ignited, but it was already too late. Muzan had studied these warriors for years through his demon's eyes, knew their response times, their capabilities, their limitations. His tendrils struck with precision that came from 1,000 years of existence, piercing through their guards before defensive techniques could fully form. The concentrated blood he'd created wasn't meant to kill but to transform, and he'd made it impossibly potent for this exact purpose. Gyomei was the first to fall, the massive stone Hashira brought to his knees as Muzan's blood flooded his system. The blind warrior's prayers turned to screams of agony as demonic cells began rewriting his body at the cellular level. His already tremendous physical strength multiplied exponentially, his prayer beads shattering and reforming as claws, his gentle tears turning to blood that streamed from his eyes. When he rose moments later, the strongest Hashira had become a demon who retained his stone-breathing techniques enhanced by demonic regeneration and strength that made his previous power seem like a child's in comparison. Sanemi fought the transformation with pure rage, his Marechi blood ironically making him more receptive to the demonic cells. The Wind Hashira's body convulsed as his aggressive nature was amplified and twisted by demon instincts. His scars multiplied into patterns across his skin, his pupils becoming slit like a predator's. When the transformation completed, Sanemi retained his wind-breathing mastery, but could now manipulate air itself with demonic blood demon art, creating cutting winds that could shred flesh from bone at a thought. Giyu's transformation happened in absolute silence. The water Hashira's stoic expression never changed even as demon blood corrupted his body. Water began to materialize around him, not from his breathing but from his new demonic nature, his blood demon art manifesting as the ability to create and control water itself. His calm, fluid movements became something inhuman in their precision, and when his transformation completed, he simply stood there with demon eyes, looking at his fellow Hashira without visible reaction. Kyojiro's flames turned from gold to crimson as the transformation took him, the flame Hashira's passionate spirit warring against the demon blood with every fiber of his being. For a moment, it seemed he might resist through sheer force of will, his flames burning so hot they scorched the floor, but Muzan's blood was too potent. When Kyojiro rose as a demon, his flames had become eternal, no longer requiring breathing techniques to sustain them. Fire wreathed his body constantly, burning with demonic energy that would never exhaust him. Tenjin's transformation incorporated his shinobi background into something nightmarish. The sound, Hashira's body adapted the demon blood into his already explosive techniques, his blood demon art manifesting as the ability to create devastating explosions from his blood itself. His hearing became perfect to the point where he could hear heartbeats from hundreds of meters away. The 3 wives he'd left at home to attend this meeting would never see their husband again. Mitsuri's transformation was heartbreaking to witness. The love Hashira's kind nature made her experience every moment with full awareness and terror. Her pink-tinged hair became fully rose-colored. Her unique muscle density that had always set her apart became demonic. And her love-breathing techniques now combined with demon regeneration to make her nearly impossible to harm. Her blood demon art manifested as threads of energy that could bind and crush, her desire to protect people twisted into possessive obsession. Obanai's transformation happened alongside his constant companion Kaburamaru, and somehow the serpent survived, as if recognizing its master still existed inside. The serpent Hashira's heterochromatic eyes became fully demonic, his serpentine movements becoming literal as his blood demon art allowed him to partially transform his limbs into actual serpents. His serpent breathing techniques merged with this ability, creating attacks that could strike from impossible angles. Shinobu's transformation was perhaps the most ironic. The insect Hashira had dedicated her life to creating poisons that could kill demons, had modified her own body to become poisonous. Now that same body became immune to all toxins as demonic cells overwrote her physiology. Her medical knowledge remained intact behind demon eyes. Her blood demon art manifested as the ability to create and manipulate toxins that could affect even demons, turning her greatest weapon against her former allies. Muichiro's transformation was completed last, the young mist Hashira's prodigious talent making him dangerous even in his final human moments. He managed to partially draw his blade before Muzan's blood overwhelmed him. When he rose as a demon, his mist-breathing techniques combined with a blood demon art that could literally erase memories and awareness, creating zones where even other demons would forget why they were fighting. His youth meant his demon form had the most potential for growth. The entire transformation process took less than 5 minutes. Kagaya and Amane had been immediately secured by Nakime's portals, held hostage to ensure compliance, though Muzan found such insurance unnecessary. The demon blood carried his will within it, and while the Hashira retained their memories, personalities, and even their moral beliefs to some degree, they now served him whether they wished to or not. The curse that bound all demons to their progenitor flowed through their veins, compelling obedience even as their human minds screamed in protest. The Upper Moons, who had assisted in the attack, stood in awe of what they were witnessing. Akaza now faced a demon version of Kyojiro, whose power made their previous encounter seem like a sparring match. Doma's smile faltered as he sensed Shinobu's demonic aura, recognizing that her poison techniques would now work even on demons of his caliber. Kokushibo looked upon the 9 transformed Hashira with something almost like envy. They had retained their breathing techniques in a way he never fully achieved, merging human skill with demonic power in unprecedented fashion. Muzan addressed his new creations with satisfaction he rarely allowed himself to display. Each would become stronger than any Upper Moon currently in his service. They would replace the 12 Kizuki entirely, restructuring his organization around these perfected weapons. The fact that they retained their personalities and memories made them even more valuable. They knew every corpse safe house, every training ground, every cultivator's location, the whereabouts of the swordsmith village. The entire infrastructure of the Demon Slayer Corps had just been handed to him. But retaining their personalities also meant retaining their relationships, and that would prove crucial in ways Muzan couldn't anticipate. The bonds between Hashira, Gyomei, and Kyojiro's mutual respect, Mitsuri and Obanai's unspoken affection, even Sanemi and Gyu's antagonistic dynamic, all remained intact beneath the demonic curse. These connections would become seeds of potential rebellion, though for now they remained dormant under Muzan's overwhelming control. News of the catastrophe spread through the Demon Slayer Corps within hours. Lower-ranked slayers who arrived at the Ubuyashiki mansion found it partially destroyed and completely abandoned, with clear signs of massive combat, but no bodies, no survivors, and most horrifying of all, 9 sets of Hashira uniforms torn and bloodied on the ground. Kasugai crows that had been assigned to each Hashira returned to Corps headquarters without their masters, their agitated cries telling a story of transformation and loss that the remaining slayers struggled to comprehend. Sakonji Urokodaki, the retired water Hashira who had trained Giyu, felt the loss like a blade through his heart. Jigoro Kuwajima, the former Thunder Hashira, wept for the future he'd hoped to see. Shinjuro Rengoku received word that his son Kyojuro had been transformed into a demon and immediately drank himself into unconsciousness. The cultivators who had trained the current generation felt their life's work crumble around them. If the Hashira could fall, if the strongest among them could be turned, what hope did anyone else have? The Corps' organizational structure collapsed almost immediately. Without the Hashira to coordinate regional defense, demon attacks that would normally have been contained spiraled out of control. Entire towns were slaughtered before lower-ranked slayers could respond. The Kakushi Medical Corps became overwhelmed with injured slayers. The Swordsmith village went into lockdown, its location potentially compromised through the transformed Hashira's retained memories. Cultivators stopped taking new students, reasoning that training children to fight when the Corps' greatest warriors had just been turned was tantamount to execution. Lower Moon demons grew bolder, venturing into territories they would never have dared enter when Hashira patrolled them. Towns that had been safe for decades suddenly found themselves under nightly assault. The common people, largely unaware of the Demon Slayer Corps' existence, began noticing that the mysterious swordsman who occasionally appeared to save them had vanished entirely. Within Muzan's organization, the transformation caused significant restructuring. The original 12 Kizuki found themselves facing obsolescence as these 9 new demons proved far more effective. Kokushibo retained his position as Upper Moon 1, but Doma and Akaza watched nervously as Demon Gyome's raw power threatened their ranks. The lower moons were effectively disbanded. Muzan had no need for weaker demons when he had 9 perfected weapons. The demon Hashira were assigned territories corresponding to their former patrol areas, a cruel irony that meant they now terrorized the very regions they'd once protected. Demon Gyome took the mountainous regions where his stone breathing had once defended isolated villages. Demon Tengen claimed the entertainment districts. Demon Shinobu was sent to medical facilities, using her retained knowledge to identify vulnerable targets. Each demon Hashira became a nightmare made manifest, their familiar forms now bringing death instead of salvation. The few remaining active demon slayers went into hiding, forming small resistance cells that moved constantly to avoid detection. Without Hashira leadership, they had no unified strategy, no coordination, no way to push back against the demonic onslaught. Some slayers broke entirely under the psychological weight. Those who remained developed new protocols for survival. Never travel alone, never stay in one place more than a day, trust no one who seems too informed about Corps operations. The loss of Kagaya meant the Corps had no central leadership whatsoever. His children were too young to assume command, and without the Ubuyashiki family's foresight and accumulated wealth, the Corps couldn't maintain its infrastructure. Safe houses became compromised. Supply lines for Nichiren ore dried up. The communication network using Kasugai crows became unreliable. Within a month of the Hashira's fall, the Demon Slayer Corps as an organization essentially ceased to exist, reduced to scattered groups of survivors. Muzan's victory was essentially complete. In one night, he had eliminated the Corps' entire leadership structure, gained 9 powerful servants who knew everything about his enemy's operations, and broken the spirit of the remaining resistance. The war between humans and demons, which had raged for 1,000 years with neither side able to claim decisive victory, had just tilted catastrophically in the demons' favor. Humanity's pillars had fallen, and nothing remained to hold back the darkness they'd once stood against. Saga 2: Tanjiro's Altered Beginning. The Kamado family lived a simple but happy life high in the mountains near the town of Okuizumo, selling charcoal to support themselves through the harsh winters. Tanjiro Kamado, the eldest son at 15 years old, took on the responsibility of providing for his mother Kii and younger siblings after their father Tanjiro's death from illness. Despite their poverty, the family was close-knit and content, with Tanjiro's kind nature and strong work ethic ensuring they never went without firewood or food. His younger sister Nezuko, at 14, helped care for their younger siblings, Takeo, Hanako, Shigeru, and little Rokuta, while their mother managed the household. The children's laughter echoed through their modest home, and neighbors spoke warmly of the Kamado family's generosity and the distinctive earrings Tanjiro wore, passed down through generations, along with a special dance performed at New Year's. That peaceful existence ended one winter night when Tanjiro had gone down the mountain to sell charcoal in town. A late start and an elderly neighbor's insistence that he stay the night due to rumors of demons meant he didn't return home until the following morning. What he found when he arrived shattered his world completely. His entire family had been slaughtered, their bodies torn apart and frozen in the snow outside their home. The scene was carnage beyond comprehension, blood staining the white snow red, his mother and siblings killed with such brutality that it was clear no human could have done this. Only Nezuko showed any signs of life, though she'd been grievously wounded and her body temperature suggested she should have frozen to death hours ago. Tanjiro desperately carried Nezuko through the snow toward town, hoping to find a doctor, but she suddenly became violent and attacked him with strength no wounded person should possess. Her wounds were healing before his eyes, her canine teeth had become fangs, and her fingernails had turned into claws. As they struggled on a cliffside path, they tumbled over the edge, and in that moment of crisis, a water Hashira named Giyu Tomioka appeared and saved them both from falling to their deaths. Giyu immediately moved to kill Nezuko, recognizing her as a demon, but Tanjiro threw himself between them, begging the swordsman to spare his sister. What shocked Giyu was seeing Nezuko protect her brother despite her demon nature, showing a level of restraint and humanity that demons typically lacked entirely. Rather than killing them both, Giyu made a decision that violated the Demon Slayer Corps' rules. He sent Tanjiro to his former master, Sakonji Urokodaki, a cultivator who lived on Mount Sagiri. Giyu wrote a letter explaining the unusual situation and specifically noting that both Tanjiro and Sakonji possessed enhanced senses of smell that might help train the boy. The journey to find Urokodaki took several days, with Tanjiro carrying Nezuko in a wooden box during daylight hours since direct sunlight would kill her. When they finally met, Urokodaki was a masked elderly man who tested Tanjiro's resolve by having him climb back down the mountain and return before daybreak without rest. Once Urokodaki accepted Tanjiro as a student, the real training began. For 2 years, Tanjiro underwent brutal physical conditioning, running down the mountain through increasingly treacherous terrain filled with traps, learning sword forms, practicing breathing techniques that would allow him to fight demons despite being human, and developing his sense of smell to detect demons and predict their movements. Urokodaki's training was merciless, designed to push Tanjiro past human limitations through total concentration breathing, a technique that increased oxygen in the blood to enhance physical capabilities. During this time, Nezuko slept in a hidden room beneath Urokodaki's house, while the old cultivator used hypnotic suggestion to reinforce her view of humans as family to be protected rather than food to be consumed. The culmination of Tanjiro's training came when Urokodaki declared he had nothing left to teach and instructed him to cut a massive boulder in half using only his sword. This seemed impossible. The boulder was larger than Tanjiro himself and harder than any rock he'd encountered. For months he tried and failed, until 2 mysterious children appeared, Sabito and Makomo, former students of Urokodaki who claimed they'd help him. Through their training, particularly Sabito's harsh sword fighting instruction, Tanjiro finally developed the skill and strength to cut through the boulder in one clean strike. When he rushed to tell Urokodaki, the old man embraced him and revealed that Sabito and Makomo had died years ago during final selection. Killed by a powerful demon on Mount Fujikasane, they'd been ghosts helping him train. Final selection was the entrance exam for the Demon Slayer Corps, held on a mountain covered in wisteria flowers that demons couldn't pass. The area deeper into the mountain had demons trapped for the test, and candidates had to survive 7 days and nights fighting them to qualify. Tanjiro entered along with roughly 20 other candidates, including a short boy named Zenitsu, who seemed terrified, and a wild young man named Inosuke, who wore a boar's head as a mask. The test was brutal. Demons attacked constantly, and candidates were given no assistance. Tanjiro encountered the Hand Demon, the very creature that had killed Sabito and Makomo years ago, having consumed 50 humans and become incredibly powerful. After a desperate battle where Tanjiro used everything Urokodaki and Sabito had taught him, he managed to decapitate the demon with water-breathing techniques. When final selection ended after 7 days, only 5 candidates survived out of the original 20, including Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke. They were given uniforms, assigned Kasugai crows for communication, and sent to swordsmiths who would forge their personal Nichiren swords. Tanjiro returned to Mount Sagiri, where Urokodaki welcomed him back with relief and tears, having feared he would lose another student. Shortly after, Tanjiro received his sword, a black blade, an unusual color that made even his swordsmith uncertain of what breathing style it represented. With Nezuko secured in her wooden box on his back, Tanjiro set off on his first mission to a northwestern town where young women were disappearing, embarking on his journey as a demon slayer with the goal of finding a way to turn his sister back into a human. The winter morning when Tanjiro Kamado returned home to find his family slaughtered would haunt him for the rest of his life, but what made this timeline infinitely worse was that no help came. In the original timeline, Giyu Tomioka had appeared like a guardian angel to save Nezuko from being killed, and had set Tanjiro on the path to becoming a demon slayer. In this timeline, Giyu Tomioka was now a demon himself, serving Muzan Kibutsuji alongside 8 other former Hashira. There was no water Hashira patrolling the mountains that night, no skilled swordsman to intervene when Nezuko attacked her brother in her newly transformed state, no one to recognize the unusual humanity remaining in the demon girl, and no letter of introduction to carry to Sakonji Urokodaki. Tanjiro fought his demonized sister on that snowy cliffside alone, nearly dying several times as Nezuko's new demonic strength overwhelmed him. He had no sword, no training, nothing but his desperate love for his family and his refusal to give up on the one sibling who'd survived the attack. What saved him was Nezuko herself. Somewhere deep inside the demon she'd become, his sister's consciousness stirred when she saw Tanjiro's tears, heard him begging her to remember their family, calling her name over and over. She stopped attacking him mid-strike, her claws inches from his throat, and something shifted in her demonic eyes. The bloodlust receded slightly, replaced by confusion and what might have been recognition. With Nezuko somewhat pacified but still dangerously unstable, Tanjiro carried her through the snow, not knowing where to go or what to do. The town doctor would be useless against a demon, and he had no knowledge of the Demon Slayer Corps' existence. The organization had collapsed so completely after the Hashira's fall that even rumors of demon slayers had faded from public consciousness. For 3 agonizing days, Tanjiro hid with Nezuko in an abandoned shed, watching in horror as his sister's wounds healed with supernatural speed and she began showing sensitivity to sunlight. He fed her water and tried to get her to eat normal food, but she refused everything, her fangs and claws making it clear she was no longer human. Desperation drove Tanjiro to seek out a shrine priest in a nearby village, hoping religious authority might know something about demons. The priest was terrified when Tanjiro described his sister's condition, but mentioned in hushed tones that decades ago, there had been warriors who fought demons with special swords. Though they'd vanished years back, he gave Tanjiro a name, Sakonji Urokodaki, a hermit who lived on Mount Sagiri, and who some claimed had once been one of those demon-hunting warriors. With nothing else to try, Tanjiro fashioned a wooden box to shield Nezuko from sunlight and began the long journey to Mount Sagiri, traveling only at night when his sister was calmer. Finding Urokodaki's home took nearly a week of searching through the mountain's forests, asking villagers who mostly dismissed the old man as a myth or a crazy recluse. When Tanjiro finally stumbled upon the modest house hidden deep in the woods, he found an elderly man in a Tengu mask who took one look at Nezuko in her box and immediately drew a sword Tanjiro hadn't seen him carrying. Urokodaki's voice was cold as he demanded to know why Tanjiro was traveling with a demon, why he hadn't killed it already, whether he understood the danger he was bringing to innocent people. The questions came like blade strikes, and Tanjiro found himself breaking down, explaining everything: the attack, his family's deaths, Nezuko's transformation, his desperate journey, his refusal to give up on his sister. What stopped Urokodaki from killing Nezuko on the spot was recognizing something familiar in Tanjiro's scent, a particular combination of determination, grief, and kindness that reminded him of students he'd lost years ago. He brought them inside and told Tanjiro a truth that made the boy's blood run cold. The Demon Slayer Corps had effectively ceased to exist a month ago. All 9 Hashira, the pillars who'd held the organization together, had been turned into demons by Muzan Kibutsuji in a coordinated attack. The Corps' leadership was dead or scattered. Cultivators like himself were in hiding, and the few remaining active demon slayers were hunted by the very Hashira who'd once been their commanders and mentors. Tanjiro listened in growing horror as Urokodaki explained how demon Giyu Tomioka now patrolled the regions where the water Hashira had once protected people, how demon Kyojuro Rengoku's flames brought death instead of salvation, how all 9 transformed Hashira retained their breathing techniques while gaining demonic regeneration and blood demon arts. The war against demons, which humanity had been slowly losing for centuries, was now essentially over. Demons had won, and the scattered survivors of the core could do little but hide and hope. Some cultivators had committed suicide rather than face the despair of this new reality. Others, like Urokodaki, remained in hiding, unsure what purpose they could still serve. When Tanjiro asked desperately if there was any way to turn Nezuko back into a human, Urokodaki's answer crushed him further. The only demon who'd ever been researching a cure was Tamayo, a rogue demon with her own grudge against Muzan, but she'd gone into deep hiding after the Hashira's fall, and finding her was virtually impossible. Tanjiro refused to accept defeat. If he couldn't find a cure immediately, he would become stronger. He would learn to fight demons, he would protect his sister while she still retained some humanity, and he would find a way to save the fallen Hashira themselves. His declaration was met with silence from Urokodaki, who recognized the same reckless determination in this boy that had gotten so many of his previous students killed. Urokodaki agreed to train Tanjiro, not because he believed in the boy's impossible dream, but because the alternative was watching him die pointlessly within days of leaving the mountain. The training that followed made Urokodaki's original harsh regimen look gentle by comparison. With the core collapsed and demon Hashira actively hunting any surviving slayers, Urokodaki knew that anyone he trained would need to be far stronger than normal just to survive their first encounter with a lower-level demon, let alone a transformed Hashira. He put Tanjiro through conditioning that bordered on torture, running down Mount Sagiri through trap-filled paths with increasingly deadly consequences. Sword practice until Tanjiro's hands bled and his muscles screamed. Breathing exercises practiced to the point of passing out from oxygen deprivation. During the 2 years of training, Nezuko remained in Urokodaki's care, sleeping in a hidden underground room, while the old cultivator reinforced hypnotic suggestions to view humans as family and demons as enemies. Unlike the original timeline, where this training had taken place in relative safety, now every day carried the risk of discovery. Demon Muichiro Tokito, whose blood demon art could erase memories and awareness, had been spotted in the region multiple times, and there were reports of demon Giyu patrolling areas uncomfortably close to Mount Sagiri. Urokodaki taught Tanjiro to suppress his scent, to move without leaving obvious tracks, to recognize signs of demon Hashira presence, and flee immediately rather than engage. The training was also complicated by Tanjiro's insistence on spending time with Nezuko, talking to her even when she couldn't respond coherently, treating her like his sister rather than the demon she'd become. Urokodaki warned him repeatedly that attachment would get him killed, but Tanjiro refused to see Nezuko as just another demon. His kindness toward her, his unwillingness to give up on her humanity, slowly had an effect. Nezuko became more stable, more controlled, able to resist her demonic hunger even when Tanjiro accidentally cut himself during training. This unusual demon who retained such strong attachment to her human family fascinated and troubled Urokodaki in equal measure. When Tanjiro finally completed the boulder cutting test after 6 months of attempts, with help from the ghosts of Sabito and Makomo, who appeared to him just as they had in the original timeline, Urokodaki felt genuine pride mixed with overwhelming dread. This boy had the talent and determination to potentially reach Hashira level given enough time, but sending him to final selection now felt like executing him personally. The test, once held on Mount Fujikasane with demons trapped by wisteria barriers, had been moved to a different location by the few remaining corps coordinators, and the demons trapped there were reportedly far more dangerous than before. Lower moons, who'd grown bold after the Hashira's fall. Demons who'd consumed multiple humans and gained significant power. Before Tanjiro left for final selection, Urokodaki gave him a piece of advice that deviated from everything he'd taught his previous students. If he encountered any of the demon Hashira during the test, he was to run immediately and without shame. Fighting them at his current level would be suicide. The 9 transformed Hashira were breathing-style masters with demonic regeneration, and even the weakest of them could effortlessly slaughter dozens of final selection candidates. There were rumors that Demon Muichiro had attacked a previous final selection, killing half the candidates before the wisteria barriers drove him away. Survival, not valor, was the only goal that mattered. Tanjiro arrived at the relocated final selection site to find only 12 other candidates instead of the usual 20 or more. The decreased numbers reflected the Corps' collapsed recruitment system, ICS, fewer cultivators, fewer students, and far more awareness of how deadly demon slaying had become. The other candidates looked desperate, traumatized, or fanatically devoted to revenge. Most ignored Tanjiro entirely, focused on their own survival. The twin girls overseeing the selection explained the rules grimly. Survive 7 days, kill as many demons as possible, and if they saw any demon larger than usual or wearing tattered Hashira uniforms, they were to activate emergency flares and retreat immediately while the remaining Corps members attempted containment. The test began at sunset, and within the first hour, 3 candidates were already dead. The demons trapped in this location were far more numerous and aggressive than the original Mount Fujikasane, and they'd learned to coordinate their attacks, picking off isolated candidates. Tanjiro survived the first night through a combination of his heightened sense of smell, which let him detect demons before they ambushed him, and the water-breathing techniques Urokodaki had drilled into him until they became second nature. He saved 2 other candidates from a coordinated demon attack, his sword flowing through water surface slash and water wheel forms that decapitated the demons before they could react. On the third night, the real nightmare began. A powerful demon, one that had clearly consumed many humans and grown grotesquely large, cornered Tanjiro in a ravine. It wasn't the hand demon from the original timeline, but something worse, a spider-like creature that could split into multiple bodies and attack from all directions simultaneously. Tanjiro fought desperately, using every technique he knew, but the demon's regeneration was too fast and its attacks too coordinated. Just as the demon was about to kill him, another candidate, a short boy named Zenitsu who'd been cowering in terror all week, suddenly intervened, his sword moving in a lightning-fast technique called thunder breathing that cut down 3 of the spider demon's bodies in a single strike before Zenitsu collapsed unconscious. Together, with Tanjiro conscious and Zenitsu unconscious, but somehow still fighting through instinct, they managed to overwhelm the spider demon and decapitate its main body. When Zenitsu woke up with no memory of fighting, he latched onto Tanjiro as an ally, terrified of dying alone. They encountered a third candidate on the 5th night, a wild young man named Inosuke wearing a boar's head, who challenged Tanjiro to a fight and grudgingly joined them when Tanjiro refused to waste energy on pointless conflict. The 3 of them survived the remainder of the test by working together, covering each other's blind spots and fighting off demons that would have killed any of them individually. On the final night, right before the test ended, a presence entered the wisteria barrier that made every surviving candidate freeze in instinctive terror. The temperature dropped, and mist began rolling through the forest, obscuring vision and deadening sound. Demon Muichiro Tokido had detected the final selection and breached the barriers through some method the Corps coordinators hadn't anticipated. His childlike figure emerged from the mist with dead eyes, his mist breathing creating zones of confusion where candidates forgot why they were running or who they were fleeing from. 2 candidates were killed instantly, decapitated before they could even scream, as Muichiro moved with speed that made him appear to teleport. Tanjiro grabbed Zenitsu and Inosuke and ran, activating an emergency flare as instructed, but Muichiro's mist was spreading too quickly. They became separated in the confusion, and Tanjiro found himself face to face with the demon Mist Hashira alone. Muichiro tilted his head, studying Tanjiro with empty eyes, and commented that his scent was familiar, like Mount Sagiri, like Urokodaki, like water. The demon raised his sword, mist coiling around the blade, and Tanjiro knew he was about to die. What saved him was a combination of luck and timing. The sun began rising at that exact moment, and Muichiro's attention shifted to escaping the daylight. The demon vanished into his mist, and Tanjiro collapsed, hyperventilating from the closest brush with death he'd ever experienced. When final selection officially ended and the survivors emerged from the forest, only 3 candidates remained alive out of 13: Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke. The coordinators looked devastated, explaining that this was the lowest survival rate in decades and they weren't sure there would be another final selection, given how dangerous it had become. They gave the survivors their uniforms, assigned them Kasugai crows, and sent them to swordsmiths with the grim knowledge that most wouldn't survive their first real missions. The Demon Slayer Corps was no longer a functional organization. It was scattered groups of survivors pretending they still had a chance. Tanjiro returned to Mount Sagiri, where Urokodaki embraced him with tears of relief, shocked that he'd survived despite Muichiro's attack. When Tanjiro received his Nichiren sword from the swordsmith Haganezuka, a black blade of uncertain style, he made a vow that went beyond anything he'd originally intended. He would find a way to save the fallen Hashira as well. Muichiro's empty eyes had shown traces of the boy he'd once been, fighting against demonic nature. If there was even the smallest chance those 9 warriors could be reached, could be reminded of their humanity, could be freed from Muzan's control, then Tanjiro would pursue that chance no matter how impossible it seemed. Urokodaki tried to talk him out of it, explaining that saving demons who'd fully transformed was impossible, that the Hashira were lost forever, that Tanjiro's mission was already suicidal, without adding 9 breathing-style masters to his list of targets. But Tanjiro's resolve was unshakable. His kindness, the very thing Urokodaki had once criticized as a weakness, had become an iron determination to save everyone, his sister, the Hashira, and anyone else caught in Muzan's web. It was an impossible dream, a mission that would almost certainly end in his death, but Tanjiro had already lost everything once. He had nothing left to lose except hope itself. As Tanjiro set off on his first mission with Nezuko secured in her box on his back, Urokodaki watched from his home and whispered a prayer to gods he'd stopped believing in years ago. The Demon Slayer Corps was finished. The Hashira were demons. And this one kind-hearted boy with a black sword was walking into a war humanity had already lost. But perhaps, the old cultivator thought, that was exactly the kind of person who might find a way to win it anyway. Tanjiro's impossible double mission, cure Nezuko and save the fallen Hashira, had begun. And the entire trajectory of this dark timeline would be shaped by whether his kindness proved stronger than the demon's cruelty. If you're enjoying the video so far, subscribe to our channel. Saga 3: The Demon Hashira Reign. In the original timeline, newly recruited demon slayers like Tanjiro embarked on missions coordinated through a sophisticated support system that had been refined over centuries of demon hunting. The Demon Slayer Corps operated as a well-oiled machine despite lacking government recognition, with Kasugai Crows delivering mission assignments to slayers based on their skill levels and the estimated danger of demon activity in various regions. Lower-ranked slayers handled weaker demons terrorizing villages and towns, while more experienced Kino-rank slayers dealt with demons that had consumed multiple humans and developed dangerous abilities. The missions followed a clear hierarchy. Investigate reports of demon activity, locate the demon's lair, engage during nighttime hours when demons were active, and eliminate the threat before sunrise. The Hashira represented the pinnacle of this system, each assigned to patrol specific regions of Japan where they could respond rapidly to threats beyond normal slayers' capabilities. Giyu Tomioka monitored northern territories, Shinobu Kocho maintained surveillance over medical facilities and populated areas where poisoning attacks were common. Kyojiro Rengoku protected transportation routes and traveled frequently to assist wherever flames were needed. Tengen Uzui used his shinobi network to gather intelligence in entertainment districts and urban centers. Mitsuri Kanroji's flexibility and strength made her ideal for mountainous regions with difficult terrain. Obanai Iguro's serpent companion helped him track demons through forests and rural areas. Sanemi Shinazugawa's aggressive style suited him for frontline dangerous zones. Gyomei Himajima's tremendous strength protected remote mountain villages, and Muichiro Tokito's speed allowed him to cover vast territories despite his youth. The Hashira trained lower-ranked slayers, investigated demon patterns, protected the swordsmith village's location, and coordinated regional defenses. Their mere presence in an area deterred most demons from attacking, as even lower moon demons recognized that engaging a Hashira meant almost certain death. The 12 Kizuki, Muzan's elite demon organization, consisted of 6 upper moons and 6 lower moons, each ranked by strength and having received substantial amounts of Muzan's blood that granted them blood demon arts, messen, supernatural abilities beyond normal demon regeneration and strength. The lower moons, while dangerous enough to require multiple skilled slayers to defeat, were still within the realm of what Hashira could handle relatively safely. Lower Moon 5 Rui had created a spider demon family on Mount Netagumo and was swiftly defeated by Giyu despite his thread manipulation abilities. Lower moons were regularly killed by Hashira to the point where Muzan eventually executed most of them for their repeated failures, keeping only Enmu as Lower Moon 1 for a final mission aboard the Mugen train. The power gap between lower and upper moons was immense. Shinobu stated that a single upper moon possessed strength equivalent to at least 3 Hashira combined, which explained why the upper moons had remained unchanged for over a century, while lower moon positions constantly cycled through replacements. Upper Moon 6, Gyutaro and Daki had killed 7 and 14 Hashira respectively over their lifetimes. Upper Moon 3 Akaza bragged about killing numerous Hashira and nearly killed Kyojuro Rengoku before Sunrise forced his retreat. Upper Moon 2 Doma eventually killed and absorbed Shinobu Kocho. And Upper Moon 1 Kokushibo nearly killed multiple Hashira simultaneously before his internal conflict led to his defeat. The Corps' mission structure relied heavily on information gathering through Kasugai Crows, civilian reports, and reconnaissance by lower-ranked slayers before Hashira were deployed. Tanjiro's early missions exemplified this system. His first assignment sent him to investigate disappearing girls in a northwestern town where he encountered the Swamp Demon, a creature that had consumed 16 young women and could create pocket dimensions filled with water. The demon wasn't part of the 12 Kizuki, but had developed a blood demon art through consuming humans, demonstrating how even non-ranked demons could become dangerous if left unchecked. Later, in Asakusa, Tanjiro encountered Muzan himself, disguised as a human businessman, forcing a confrontation with demons Susamaru and Yahaba, who attacked under Muzan's orders. Mount Natagumo brought Tanjiro face-to-face with Lower Moon 5 Rui, whose spider demon family demonstrated how some demons organize themselves into hierarchies. Though Rui's threads nearly killed Tanjiro before Giyu arrived to finish the battle with a single technique. These early missions taught Tanjiro the brutal reality of demon slaying. Even with training, most demons required teams to defeat safely. Fatal injuries happened constantly, and survival often depended on luck as much as skill. The Kikuchi Medical Corps worked tirelessly to retrieve injured slayers and transport them to Butterfly Mansion for treatment, and cultivators trained replacements as quickly as possible because the attrition rate among new slayers was devastating. This entire system, brutal as it was, had maintained a stalemate between humans and demons for centuries, neither side able to claim decisive victory, but both enduring through determination and sacrifice. In this altered timeline, the systematic demon hunting structure had collapsed entirely, replaced by a nightmare where the very pillars meant to protect humanity now served as its executioners. The 9-demon Hashira fundamentally restructured demonkind's entire approach to destroying humanity. Each demon Hashira retained centuries of combat experience, tactical knowledge of core operations, personal relationships with surviving slayers, and complete understanding of humanity's defensive capabilities. Muzan assigned them territories corresponding to their former patrol areas, a psychological warfare tactic that ensured each region would be terrorized by the hero who once protected it. Demon Gyome Himejima claimed the mountainous regions of Japan as his domain, his massive form now even more imposing with demonic enhancement. The Stone Hashira, who had once been the Corps' strongest defender, was now its most terrifying enemy. His stone-breathing techniques, already devastating in human form, became apocalyptic when combined with demonic regeneration and strength. His blood demon art manifested as the ability to manipulate actual stone and earth, creating earthquakes and landslides with his movements. Remote mountain villages that had once felt safest under Gyome's protection found themselves isolated and vulnerable as demon. Gyome systematically destroyed travel routes, collapsed mountain passes, and buried entire settlements under tons of rock and earth. His blind eyes still wept constantly, blood-tinged tears that streamed down his face as he prayed even while killing, his faith warring against demonic nature in an internal conflict that made him no less deadly. Survivors reported hearing his prayers echoing through the mountains before attacks came, his voice calling upon gods who couldn't save him from what he'd become. Demon Sanemi Shinazugawa took the frontline territories where demon activity had always been highest, his already aggressive nature amplified into pure bloodlust. The wind Hashira's Marechi blood that had once been used as bait for demons now made him intoxicatingly powerful as a demon himself. Other demons were drawn to his scent, but quickly learned that approaching him meant death. As Sanemi killed and consumed any demon weaker than himself to increase his strength, his blood demon art created cutting winds that could shred entire buildings. invisible blades of compressed air that killed victims before they realized they were under attack. His scars multiplied across his body in demonic patterns, and his eyes held nothing but rage and hunger. Former Corps members who'd known Sanemi recognized that his demon form had simply unleashed the violence he'd always barely contained as a human, removing what little restraint his protective instincts had provided. He hunted with savage efficiency, tracking survivors through scent and leaving no witnesses. Demon Gyu Tomioka patrolled the northern territories with the same silent efficiency he'd shown as the water Hashira, but now that efficiency served death rather than protection. His transformation was perhaps the most unsettling because his demeanor hadn't changed. He remained calm, quiet, emotionally distant, making it impossible to tell whether he felt remorse for what he was doing or had embraced his demonic nature entirely. His blood demon art allowed him to create and control water itself, not just mimic it through sword techniques, flooding entire regions and drowning hundreds with casual gestures. Former students and slayers who'd trained under Sakonji Urokadaki's water-breathing lineage found themselves hunted by the very Hashira who'd inspired them to join the Corps. Demon Gyu's dead calm technique, which in human form had created a defensive sphere where he could cut any attack entering it, now functioned on a massive scale. Entire assault teams would attack him, only to be systematically cut down without him showing any emotion whatsoever. Demon Kyojuro Rengoku's eternal flames burned across central Japan, the flame Hashira's passionate spirit twisted into an inferno that consumed everything in its path. Unlike his controlled flames as a human, his demonic fire burned continuously, wreathing his body in crimson light visible for miles that served as a horrifying beacon of destruction. His blood demon art made his flames burn hotter than any natural fire, capable of melting stone and metal, and most terrifyingly, his flames now ignored the sunrise that would normally kill demons. As long as he maintained his fire, the sunlight couldn't reach his body directly, allowing him to hunt during daylight hours in shadowed areas. Former Corps members who'd admired Kyojuro's speeches about protecting the weak and setting their hearts ablaze now heard those same words spoken in demonic mockery as he burned villages and slaughtered families. His internal conflict was visible in how his flames flickered and surged unpredictably, sometimes hesitating before killing strikes, as his warrior spirit fought against Muzan's control, but the flames always completed their work regardless. Demon Tenjin Uzui transformed the entertainment districts he'd once protected into hunting grounds, his shinobi background making him the most strategic and calculating of the demon Hashira. The sound Hashira's blood demon art created explosions from his blood itself, allowing him to detonate any surface his blood touched, turning entire city blocks into bomb-laden death traps. His superhuman hearing, already exceptional as a human, became perfect to the point where he could detect heartbeats and breathing from hundreds of meters away, making stealth or hiding impossible in his territory. His 3 wives, who'd assisted him as a Hashira, went into hiding after learning of his transformation, and Demon Tengen hunted for them obsessively between other assignments. Determined to either turn them into demons or consume them, his flamboyant personality twisted into possessive obsession. The explosions that lit up entertainment districts at night were no longer fireworks, but Demon Tengen's blood demon art detonating as he slaughtered crowds. Demon Mitsuri Kanroji's transformation was heartbreaking because her loving, affectionate nature remained partially intact, creating a demon who genuinely believed she was still protecting people even as she killed them. The love Hashira's incredible muscle density and flexibility, already superhuman, became impossibly enhanced by demonic regeneration. Her blood demon art manifested as pink energy threads that could bind and crush. Her desire to embrace and hold people transformed into deadly restraints that squeezed victims to death while she smiled and spoke about keeping them safe forever. Her territory included populated areas where her cheerful demeanor had once comforted civilians. 7. Now, those same people fled in terror from the pink-haired demon who chased them, calling out affectionately while her threads cut through buildings to grab the fleeing. The love-breathing techniques that relied on her whip-like sword now worked through her blood demon art directly, creating binding attacks that were nearly impossible to escape. Demon Obanai Iguro haunted the forests and rural territories with his serpent companion Kaburamaru, somehow still by his side, the snake having adapted to its master's demonic transformation. The serpent Hashira's blood demon art allowed him to partially transform his limbs into actual serpents that could strike independently. his attacks coming from impossible angles as serpentine appendages extended from his body. His heterochromatic eyes took on a hypnotic quality that could paralyze victims who met his gaze directly, and his serpent breathing techniques became literal as his body twisted and bent beyond human flexibility. His obsessive nature intensified in demon form. He fixated on specific targets and pursued them with patient, methodical determination that made him impossible to escape. The bandages that had once covered his scarred mouth were torn away, revealing a mouth that split unnaturally wide and could unhinge like a serpent's jaw. Demon Shinobu Kocho represented perhaps the cruelest irony of all the transformations. The insect Hashira who dedicated her life to creating poisons that could kill demons, who'd modified her own body to become poisonous because she lacked the strength to decapitate demons normally, now possessed complete immunity to all toxins as a demon while gaining the ability to create poisons that affected even other demons. Her blood demon art produced neurotoxins and paralytic agents that could kill in seconds or torture for hours depending on her mood, and her medical knowledge meant she knew exactly how to keep victims conscious and aware while their bodies failed. She maintained her gentle smile and soft-spoken manner even while conducting grotesque experiments on captured slayers, studying how demon biology worked from the inside now that she was one. The Butterfly Mansion she'd once run as a medical facility became a laboratory where Demon Shinobu tested her poisons on captured humans, seeking to create the perfect toxin that could even affect Muzan himself. Her desire to avenge her sister perverted into scientific curiosity about suffering. Demon Muichiro Tokito was perhaps the most unpredictable because his memory issues, present even as a human, became catastrophically worse as a demon. The mist Hashira's blood demon art created actual mist that erased memories and awareness of anyone caught within it. Victims would forget they were in danger, forget they were running, sometimes forget how to breathe entirely. His own memories fragmented so severely that he sometimes forgot he was a demon, reverting to behavior patterns from his human life before suddenly remembering and attacking with vicious efficiency. His youth meant his demon form had the most potential for growth, and his prodigious talent that had made him a Hashira in just 2 months now served to make him increasingly deadly as a demon. His mist techniques, already disorienting as breathing-style attacks, became inescapable death zones where even other demons became confused and vulnerable. Muzan occasionally deployed 9 demon Hashira in coordinated strikes that showcased the terrifying power of breathing-style masters working together. A combined assault by Demon Gyome, Demon Rengoku, and Demon Sanemi on a fortified corpse safe house demonstrated the futility of resistance when stone-breathing earthquakes collapsed defensive positions, flame-breathing incinerated barriers, and wind-breathing cut down anyone who survived. No remaining Slayer possessed the skill to engage even one Demon Hashira and survive, let alone multiple working in coordination. The psychological impact on surviving core members was devastating. These were the heroes they'd admired, the warriors they'd aspired to become, the mentors who'd trained them. Seeing their idols transformed into demons, using the very techniques they'd been taught to identify and counter now employed for slaughter, broke the spirit of resistance faster than any physical defeat. Some slayers committed suicide rather than face the possibility of being killed by their former mentors. Others abandoned the core entirely, reasoning that if the Hashira couldn't resist Muzan's power, what hope did anyone else have? The few remaining cultivators ceased training new students, unable to justify sending children to die against impossible odds. Sakonji Urokodaki went into deep hiding after hearing that Demon Giyu was hunting specifically for him, seeking to eliminate the cultivator who trained him. The swordsmith village locked down completely, its swordsmiths refusing to forge new blades when Demon Muichiro's retained memories meant its location might be compromised at any moment. The Kikuchi Medical Corps became undertakers more than medics, collecting bodies rather than treating injured because there were so few survivors to treat. Lower moon demons, emboldened by the Hashira's fall, grew far more aggressive, venturing into territories they'd never dared enter when Hashira patrols were active. Towns that had been safe for decades suddenly faced nightly demon attacks with no one to call for help. The common people began noticing that the mysterious swordsmen who occasionally appeared to save them from monsters had vanished entirely, replaced by new monsters that fought with swords themselves. Some rural areas formed militia groups armed with wisteria and desperate tactics, but humans without breathing techniques stood no chance against demons who'd consumed multiple victims. The demon Hashira's systematic destruction of humanity's defenses occurred with military precision. They targeted core infrastructure specifically. Safe houses, identified through their retained memories, were raided and destroyed. Known cultivator locations were systematically eliminated. Kakushi supply lines were intercepted and destroyed. Within 3 months of the Hashira's fall, the Demon Slayer Corps as an organization had effectively ceased to exist, reduced to isolated cells of survivors who moved constantly, never staying anywhere more than a night, trusting no one with information about their movements, and avoiding any demon activity rather than engaging it. Muzan's victory was essentially total. In transforming the Hashira, he'd eliminated humanity's greatest defenders, gained perfect intelligence about their operations, and demonstrated that even the strongest human warriors were powerless against his blood. The systematic territorial control exercised by the demon Hashira meant demons could now operate openly in many regions without fear of retaliation. Some demons began establishing permanent feeding grounds, keeping human populations as livestock rather than hunting freely. The balance between humans and demons that had existed for 1,000 years shattered completely, tilted so far in demons' favor that extinction seemed inevitable. The most terrifying aspect was that the demon Hashira were still growing stronger. Fed on a steady supply of humans and empowered by Muzan's blood, they evolved continuously. Demon Gyome's earthquakes became stronger. Demon Rengoku's flames burned hotter. Demon Tenjin's explosions grew more devastating. Within months, each demon Hashira had surpassed their human peak by orders of magnitude, and Muzan encouraged this growth, knowing that the stronger they became, the more impossible any resistance would be. Humanity's pillars had fallen, and upon their broken remains, Muzan was building an empire of eternal darkness. Saga 4: The Underground Resistance and First Breakthrough. After grueling battles and near-death experiences, injured demon slayers required extensive recovery and retraining before returning to active duty. The Butterfly Mansion, operated by Shinobu Kocho and her assistants Aoi Kanzaki, Sumi Nakahara, Kyo Terauchi, and Naho Takada, served as the primary medical facility and rehabilitation center for the Corps. Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke arrived at the mansion following their Mount Natagumo mission, where they'd faced Lower Moon 5 Rui and barely survived. The rehabilitation training developed by Shinobu proved brutal, beginning with basic exercises to restore lung capacity and physical conditioning, then progressing to reflex training, total concentration breathing, constant practice, and eventually advanced combat drills. The training regimen emphasized maintaining total concentration breathing continuously, even during sleep, which exponentially increased a slayer's base physical capabilities and stamina. This constant breathing state separated experienced demon slayers from novices, allowing them to fight for extended periods without exhaustion. The Corps' training system relied heavily on cultivators, CHE, former demon slayers, or experienced warriors who specialized in teaching specific breathing styles to new recruits. Water breathing was the most commonly taught style because it was considered the easiest to learn and most adaptable, with numerous cultivators like Sakanji Urokodaki training students across Japan. Thunder breathing had cultivators like Jigoro Kuwajima, though fewer than water-breathing trainers. Wind, mist, and flower breathing each had their own cultivators, though in smaller numbers. Flame breathing was unique in being taught exclusively by the Rengoku family, passed down through generations using family records and direct instruction. Most demon slayers trained under these cultivators for 1 to 5 years before attempting final selection, learning swordsmanship, tactics, demon anatomy, and survival skills. The cultivators themselves varied in their teaching methods. Some used oral instruction combined with hands-on practice, others incorporated written materials and theory. But all emphasized the fundamental principle that breathing techniques allowed humans to temporarily match demonic strength through enhanced oxygen intake and controlled physical enhancement. Beyond individual cultivators, the Corps maintained several specialized facilities. The Swordsmith Village represented the organization's most critical infrastructure, a hidden settlement where master craftsmen forged and repaired Nichiren swords. the only weapons capable of permanently killing demons. The village's location was kept so secret that even demon slayers visiting it were transported blindfolded, with their ears and noses plugged, carried on the backs of Kikushi, who themselves didn't know the exact location. The transportation routes and Kikushi carriers changed constantly, guided by Kasugai crows that were also regularly rotated. This elaborate security had protected the village for over 300 years, ensuring the Corps always had access to the specialized ore and expert craftsmanship needed to arm demon slayers. The village housed training equipment, including mechanical dolls like the Yoriichi Type 0, therapeutic hot springs with remarkable healing properties, and residences for the swordsmiths who wore Hayatoko masks to conceal their identities as additional protection against demon tracking. Mitsuri Kanroji, the love Hashira at 19 years old, embodied a unique combination of overwhelming physical power and gentle emotional warmth. Her appearance was distinctive, long sakura pink hair fading to lime green, bright green eyes with white sparkles, and a curvaceous build that belied her incredible muscular density. Unlike normal humans, Mitsuri possessed muscles 8 times denser than average, giving her tremendous strength despite her slender limbs. This unique physiology required her to eat as much as 3 sumo wrestlers to maintain her body, with her favorite foods being pork cutlets and omurice. Her journey to becoming a Hashira had been complicated by societal expectations. At 17, she dyed her distinctive pink-green hair black and tried to suppress her strength to appear normal during marriage proposals. But the rejection she faced for being too strong and too abnormal had devastated her until she found acceptance in the Demon Slayer Corps. Mitsuri had trained under Kyojuro Rengoku as the Flame Hashira's student, initially learning flame breathing before developing her own derivative style called love breathing that better suited her flexibility and unique physiology. Her weapon was as unusual as her abilities, an extremely thin, flexible Nichirin sword more akin to a whip, forged by the expert swordsmith Tekken Tekikawahara. Only Mitsuri could wield this blade without cutting herself, requiring her superhuman flexibility to execute the flowing, long-range attacks that made her fighting style so effective. Her techniques included Shivers of First Love, which created multiple simultaneous cuts across a target, Love Pangs with long winding slashes hitting multiple angles, Cat Love Shower releasing arched slashes from above, Swaying Love Wild Claw forming tornado-like attacks, and Cat-Legged Winds of Love extending and retracting her blade in rapid succession. Her personality was as warm as her combat style was deadly, constantly complimenting others, easily flustered but genuinely kind, sometimes childlike in her enthusiasm, and driven by a sincere desire to protect people and find someone who would accept her strength. She viewed her fellow Hashira with affection, got along particularly well with Shinobu as one of only 2 female Hashira, and harbored deep feelings for Obanai Iguro, though her past trauma with rejection made confession difficult. In combat, despite her gentle demeanor, she showed no mercy to demons, expressing fierce determination to protect her comrades and fulfill her duties. Her mission to the Swordsmith village alongside Tanjiro, Nezuko, and Genya Shinazugawa would demonstrate her true capabilities when facing Upper Moon's Gyoko and Hantengu, where she awakened her Demon Slayer mark and held off the combined strength of Upper Rank 4's hatred manifestation until sunrise. This battle would prove that beneath her cheerful exterior lay one of the Corps' most formidable warriors, capable of matching upper-rank demons through sheer determination and the desire to be useful to those she cared about. In this altered timeline, the concept of structured rehabilitation training had ceased to exist entirely. The Butterfly Mansion, once a sanctuary for injured slayers, had been destroyed in the chaos. Following the Hashira's fall, Demon Shinobu knew its exact location from her memories and had personally overseen its dismantling. Though reports suggested she'd hesitated before giving the final order, her hand trembling as she held the torch. The few surviving Kikushi Medical Corps members operated from constantly moving field hospitals, using wagons and abandoned buildings, never staying more than a night in any location before demon patrols forced them to relocate. Medical supplies were desperately scarce, with the Swordsmith village in permanent lockdown and supply lines severed. Injured slayers often died from wounds that would have been treatable at the Butterfly Mansion, and those who survived carried permanent disabilities that ended their demon-slaying careers. Tanjiro's training after final selection didn't follow any established core protocol because there was no core structure remaining to provide it. Instead, he found himself pulled into a loose network of survivors that called themselves the Underground Resistance. Though that name was more aspirational than accurate, they were scattered groups of traumatized demon slayers, retired cultivators, civilian survivors, and a handful of former Kakushi who'd managed to stay alive through constant movement and extreme caution. The resistance had no central leadership, no unified strategy, and no realistic hope of victory. Their goals had shrunk from defeat Muzan to simply survive another day and save who we can. Tanjiro's primary training came from an unlikely coalition of 3 individuals who'd found each other in the weeks after the Hashira's fall. The first was an elderly woman named Hisa, a former Kakushi who'd served the Corps for 40 years and remembered old techniques that had fallen out of practice. The second was Kaido, a surviving Kino rank slayer who'd lost his left arm to Demon Sanemi's wind attacks but retained his knowledge of combat tactics and demon behavior. The third was a mysterious figure who refused to give their name, claiming it was safer if no one knew their identity, but who possessed extensive knowledge of breathing techniques that suggested they'd once been a cultivator. This unnamed mentor became Tanjiro's primary teacher, recognizing something unusual in the boy's breathing pattern that resembled descriptions of sun breathing they'd read in ancient Corps records. The training took place in a hidden cave system deep in the mountains, far from any Demon Hashira territory, a location the Resistance had been using for 3 months and would abandon in another 2 weeks when demon patrols inevitably drew too close. Unlike Urokodaki's methodical 2-year program, Tanjiro's training was compressed and desperate, focused on survival above mastery. The unnamed mentor pushed him relentlessly, explaining that normal demon slayers trained for years before becoming competent, but Tanjiro didn't have years. He might not have months. Every day, demon attacks killed more survivors. Every week, another resistance cell was discovered and eliminated. The human race was losing this war so quickly that Tanjiro needed to become strong enough to make a difference immediately, or there wouldn't be anyone left to save. The training emphasized sun breathing rather than water breathing, which shocked the unnamed mentor when they realized Tanjiro could actually perform the techniques. Sun breathing, the original breathing style created by Yoriichi Tsugikuni centuries ago, had been thought lost to history when all derivative styles were created because no one could replicate Yoriichi's mastery. But Tanjiro's family had preserved the Hinokami Kagura, a ceremonial dance that was actually sun breathing disguised as tradition, passed down through the Kamado bloodline from Sumiyoshi, a coal burner who'd befriended Yoriichi long ago. The unnamed mentor recognized the forms when Tanjiro demonstrated them, and together they worked to transform the dance into combat techniques. Sun breathing proved far more demanding than water breathing, requiring greater physical conditioning and precise breathing control that pushed Tanjiro to his limits daily. He practiced until he vomited blood, until his muscles tore and his lungs felt like they were burning, because the mentor insisted that only sun breathing had a chance of reaching the Demon Hashira's level eventually. Nezuko's development during this period was equally unusual. Rather than sleeping for years under Urokodaki's hypnotic conditioning, she remained active with the Resistance, her demon nature making her valuable for night scouting missions where her enhanced senses could detect other demons before they ambushed human survivors. The Resistance members initially feared and distrusted her, but Tanjiro's unwavering defense of his sister and her repeated acts of protecting humans gradually won them over. Nezuko's self-control impressed everyone. She was exposed to injured humans bleeding constantly, yet never once attempted to feed, instead standing guard over wounded survivors, while Tanjiro and others fought off demon attacks. Her blood demon art manifested earlier in this timeline, perhaps triggered by the desperate circumstances, allowing her to combust her blood into pink flames that harmed demons but left humans unharmed. This ability proved invaluable for destroying demon bodies completely and preventing them from regenerating. During his training, Tanjiro learned harsh truths about the current state of the world. The cultivator system had collapsed completely. Most cultivators were either dead or in such deep hiding that finding them was impossible. The few who'd survived, like the unnamed mentor training Tanjiro, refused to take on multiple students anymore, reasoning that teaching people to fight when the war was already lost just meant watching more students die pointlessly. The swordsmith village had gone completely dark, with no communication in or out, and no one knew if the swordsmiths were still alive or if demons had discovered the location. Existing Nichiren swords became precious artifacts, hoarded and protected because there was no way to repair them or forge new ones. Tanjiro's Black Blade, already mysterious in the original timeline, became even more significant as possibly one of the last Nichiren swords ever created. The Resistance's intelligence network, cobbled together from surviving Kasugai crows and human scouts willing to risk their lives, brought constant reports of Demon Hashira activity. Demon Gyomei was systematically destroying mountain villages in the north. Demon Sanemi had killed 3 separate resistance cells in brutal attacks. Demon Gyu's territories reported entire towns going silent overnight, but the intelligence also noted something curious. Demon Mitsuri's kill patterns showed inconsistencies. Sometimes she would slaughter entire groups without hesitation. Other times, survivors reported she'd seem distracted or hesitant, letting people escape when she could have easily killed them. One report mentioned her stopping mid-attack to cry, her face twisted in confusion before she fled rather than completing her assault. The unnamed mentor, analyzing these patterns, suggested that Demon Mitsuri might be the most reachable of the Demon Hashira. Her human personality had been deeply emotional and empathetic. Perhaps those traits created enough internal conflict to give her moments of clarity. It was a desperate theory, but the Resistance needed any advantage they could find. If even one Demon Hashira could be reached, could be reminded of their humanity enough to resist Muzan's control even briefly, it might create an opening. The mentor proposed something insane. Rather than avoiding Demon Hashira territories as standard protocol demanded, Tanjiro should deliberately seek out Demon Mitsuri and attempt to appeal to her remaining humanity. Tanjiro's immediate agreement to this suicidal mission didn't surprise anyone who'd gotten to know him. His determination to save both his sister and the fallen Hashira had only intensified during training. He'd listened to survivors' stories about the Hashira's heroism before their fall, heard how Mitsuri had been known for her kindness and her desire to protect others. If she was still fighting against her demon nature internally, then Tanjiro believed he could reach her. The mentor spent 2 weeks teaching Tanjiro everything they knew about Mitsuri's love-breathing techniques, her fighting style, her weaknesses, and most importantly, her values and personality from before the transformation. They emphasized that any attempt to fight her would fail. Tanjiro wasn't strong enough to defeat a Hashira even if she'd been human, and as a demon with enhanced abilities, she could kill him in seconds. His only chance was to survive long enough to make her remember, to appeal to the loving, protective nature she'd once possessed. The mission began with intelligence gathering. Scouts reported Demon Mitsuri patrolling regions near what had once been populous towns, though those towns were now graveyards with demon activity everywhere. Her patterns suggested she was hunting for survivors who'd fled into the wilderness, and she seemed to be searching for something or someone specific, calling out names occasionally that scouts couldn't quite hear. Tanjiro, accompanied by Zenitsu and Inosuke, who absolutely refused to let him go alone, tracked her movements for 3 days before finally locating her near an abandoned village at the base of a mountain. The confrontation began at dusk, the fading sunlight painting the sky pink and green like Mitsuri's hair. Tanjiro approached openly rather than attempting stealth, knowing her demon senses would detect them anyway. When Demon Mitsuri turned to face them, the sight made Tanjiro's breath catch. She looked almost exactly like the descriptions he'd heard, except her eyes held demonic patterns and her smile seemed wrong. Too wide, too hungry. Her whip-like sword was already drawn, flowing around her like a living thing, and pink energy threads from her blood demon art flickered in the air around her. Demon Mitsuri's first words were cheerful, almost friendly. "Oh, more visitors! Are you here to play with me? I've been so lonely!" But her hands gripped her sword tighter, and her body tensed like a predator about to pounce. Tanjiro stepped forward, keeping his hands visible, and said the words the unnamed mentor had helped him prepare. "Kanroji-san, we're not here to fight. We're here to help you remember." The battle that followed was less a fight than a desperate game of survival. Demon Mitsuri attacked with techniques Tanjiro recognized from his training, shivers of first love creating multiple slashes that he barely dodged using sun-breathing footwork, love pangs with her blade wrapping around cover to strike from impossible angles, cat love shower raining attacks from above when she leaped with demonic agility. Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke worked together, using the teamwork they'd developed at final selection, but they were hopelessly outmatched. Demon Mitsuri's speed let her attack all three simultaneously. Her regeneration meant even when they landed hits, she recovered instantly, and her strength could shatter boulders with casual strikes. But Tanjiro wasn't trying to defeat her, he was trying to reach her. Between dodging her attacks, he shouted about her past, about how she'd joined the Demon Slayer Corps looking for acceptance, about how she'd trained under Kyojuro Rengoku who'd valued her strength, about how she'd created love breathing specifically to embrace what made her unique. He reminded her of the hot springs at the Swordsmith village, where she'd been kind to others, of her friendship with Shinobu Kocho, of her feelings for Obanai Iguro. Every fact the mentor had taught him, every story survivors had shared, Tanjiro used as ammunition, trying to pierce through the demonic nature controlling her. For the first 10 minutes, Demon Mitsuri showed no response, except increasingly aggressive attacks. Her swaying love Wildclaw created a tornado of slashes that nearly killed all three of them, forcing Nezuko to intervene with her blood demon art flames to destroy the incoming attacks. But then something shifted. When Tanjiro mentioned Obanai's name specifically, describing how the serpent Hashira had given Mitsuri the green thigh-high stockings she wore as a gift, Demon Mitsuri's attack faltered mid-strike. Her blade retracted slightly, and confusion crossed her face. "Obanai?" she whispered, the name seeming to trigger something. He. Tanjiro pressed the advantage, describing more, how Mitsuri had wanted to find someone stronger than herself who would accept her, how the Corps had given her that acceptance, how she'd been determined to protect everyone because being useful and protecting people was what made her happy. Demon Mitsuri's attacks became erratic, sometimes striking with full force, other times pulling back at the last second. She started talking, her words tumbling out in confused fragments. "I remember, I wanted to help, but now what did I do? Why are my hands covered in?" She looked down at her claws, and horror crossed her features, as if seeing them for the first time. The breakthrough came when Demon Mitsuri grabbed Tanjiro with her whip blade, wrapping it around him to restrain rather than cut. She pulled him close, her demonic eyes searching his face, and she asked in a small, frightened voice completely unlike her earlier predatory tone, "Did I kill them? The people I was supposed to protect. Did I kill them?" Tanjiro, trapped and knowing this could be his death, answered honestly, "Yes, but it wasn't your choice. Muzan controls you. You're fighting against him right now. I can see you fighting." Tears streamed down Demon Mitsuri's face as her internal war became visible. Her hands trembled, her blade loosening its grip on Tanjiro. She stepped back, releasing him, and clutched her head as if trying to tear something out of it. "Get away," she gasped. "I can feel him. Muzan. He's angry that I stopped. He's trying to make me kill you. You have to run before I." Her body convulsed, and for a moment, her demonic nature surged back, her eyes going empty and predatory. She lunged at Tanjiro with killing intent, her blade aimed at his throat. Nezuko intercepted, her own demonic strength, allowing her to catch Demon Mitsuri's blade in her hands despite the cuts it left. The sight of another demon protecting a human seemed to shock Demon Mitsuri again, breaking Muzan's control a second time. A demon protecting humans. She stared at Nezuko with wonder and confusion. "You're like me! You're fighting it too!" The two demons stood there, a strange moment of recognition passing between them, both transformed against their will, both fighting to retain their humanity, both suffering under Muzan's curse. The moment couldn't last. Demon Mitsuri screamed in pain, black veins spreading across her skin as Muzan punished her resistance from afar. She fell to her knees, gasping, I can't stop him for long. Please run! I don't want to kill you! I don't!" Her eyes cleared one final time, and she looked directly at Tanjiro. "Tell Obanai I'm sorry. Tell him I'm trying. Tell him." Whatever she meant to say was lost as her body went rigid, Muzan's control reasserting itself forcefully. But instead of attacking, Demon Mitsuri turned and fled at tremendous speed, disappearing into the forest. Tanjiro realized she was running away from them intentionally, using what little control she had to remove herself from the situation before Muzan could force her to kill them. It was an act of incredible willpower, fighting the Demon King's command enough to flee rather than slaughter. As her presence faded in the distance, Tanjiro collapsed from exhaustion and relief, his body shaking from how close to death they'd all come. The resistance cell that retrieved them 3 hours later was shocked they'd survived. When Tanjiro reported what had happened, that demon Mitsuri had stopped attacking, had shown recognition and remorse, had actively resisted Muzan's control, the implications were staggering. It meant the demon Hashira weren't lost causes. It meant they were still fighting internally. It meant there was hope, however slim, that they could be saved. More importantly, it meant Tanjiro's impossible mission wasn't actually impossible. News of the encounter spread through the resistance network rapidly, traveling through whispered conversations and coded Kasugai Crow messages. For the first time since the Hashira's fall, survivors had something resembling hope. If Demon Mitsuri could be reached, could the others? Were they all fighting against their demonic nature? Some resistance members argued this made the demon Hashira more dangerous. If they were aware and suffering, it meant they understood the atrocities they were committing, which was somehow worse. Others argued it meant the Hashira hadn't truly betrayed humanity, that they were victims who needed to be saved, rather than enemies to be destroyed. But the encounter also had consequences that Tanjiro couldn't have anticipated. Muzan, connected to all demons through his blood, had felt Demon Mitsuri's resistance and had witnessed through her eyes the boy who'd caused it. The Demon King became aware of Tanjiro Kamado's existence earlier than in any other timeline, a teenager with a black Nichirin sword, a demon sister who retained humanity, and the apparent ability to reach Demon Hashira through emotional appeals. Muzan recognized this as a threat that needed to be eliminated immediately. Orders went out to the other Demon Hashira: find this boy with the Hanafuda earrings and kill him, along with his demon sister. The priority level was elevated to critical, higher than normal demon slayer hunting, higher than destroying resistance cells, higher even than searching for the blue spider lily temporarily. The unnamed mentor, upon hearing about Muzan's interest in Tanjiro, made a grim observation. You've proven the demon Hashira can be reached, which gives humanity hope we desperately needed. But you've also painted a target on your back that will never disappear. Every demon in Japan will be hunting you now, and Muzan himself knows your face. Your survival just became exponentially more difficult. They paused, then added, but if you can reach Mitsuri, you can reach the others. That's the path forward. That's how we save them and end this war. It's impossible, suicidal, and probably hopeless, but it's the only strategy we have. Tanjiro accepted this burden without hesitation, just as he'd accepted every other impossible task in his journey. The encounter with Demon Mitsuri had proven his instincts correct. Kindness could pierce through demonic corruption, emotional appeals could create cracks in Muzan's control, and the Hashira's warrior spirits were still fighting their transformed state. His mission had evolved from simply protecting Nezuko and finding a cure to something far more ambitious, systematically seeking out each demon Hashira and helping them remember their humanity. It would require him to become far stronger, to master sun breathing to a degree that might let him survive encounters with demons who could kill him effortlessly, and to develop the emotional intelligence to reach warriors drowning in demonic instincts. The Resistance, energized by this first proof of concept, began changing its strategy. Instead of pure survival and avoidance, they would support Tanjiro's mission to reach the demon Hashira. They would gather intelligence on each transformed Hashira's location, patterns, and psychological vulnerabilities. They would train Tanjiro to survive increasingly dangerous encounters. They would protect him between missions so Muzan's hunters wouldn't eliminate him before he could make a difference. It was still a desperate gamble with minimal chance of success, but it was better than waiting to die in hiding. As Tanjiro recovered from his injuries and resumed training with renewed purpose, he couldn't stop thinking about Demon Mitsuri's tears, her confusion, her desperate plea for him to run before she killed him. She was still in there, still human where it mattered most, still caring about protecting others even while being forced to destroy them. If he could help her break free completely, if he could do the same for the other 8 Demon Hashira, then maybe humanity stood a chance. The unnamed mentor was right. It was impossible, suicidal, and hopeless. But Tanjiro had already lost everything once. He had nothing left to lose, except the hope that kindness could still matter in a world consumed by darkness, and he refused to let that hope die. Before we continue our video, subscribe to our channel. Saga 5: The Demon Hashira's Internal War. The Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps represented more than just the organization's strongest warriors, but they embodied the bonds and relationships that made humanity worth protecting. During the Infinity Castle arc, when the 9 pillars were scattered across Muzan's dimensional fortress and forced to fight separately, Their individual strengths and connections to each other became critical to survival. Each Hashira possessed unique motivations that drove them beyond simple duty, creating a complex web of relationships that defined the corp's leadership. Giyu Tomioka, the water Hashira, maintained a reserved disposition that many mistakenly interpreted as aloofness or arrogance. Particularly Sanemi Shinazugawa and Obanai Iguro, who held contempt for what they perceived as superiority. However, Giyu's quiet nature masked deep survivor's guilt and an inferiority complex stemming from his belief that he didn't deserve his position, as he felt Sabito should have survived final selection instead. Despite his emotional distance, Giyu formed meaningful connections with certain Hashira. He enjoyed conversations with Shinobu Kocho, respected Kyojuro Rengoku, who talked to him frequently, and admired Gyome Himejima deeply. His relationship with Shinobu proved particularly significant, as she alone seemed to understand that his silence wasn't arrogance but pain, and she persistently engaged him in conversation, eventually helping him recognize his worth during Hashira training. Kyojuro Rengoku embodied optimism and enthusiasm, serving as an inspirational figure who viewed all his fellow Hashira positively and encouraged them without judgment. As a mentor to Mitsuri Kanroji before she developed love-breathing from his flame-breathing teachings, he maintained a brotherly relationship with her that she treasured. His straightforward, never-complaining nature earned Gyome's respect, while his talkative personality connected well with most Hashira, despite overwhelming quieter members like Giyu and Muichiro. Kyojuro's core motivation stemmed from his mother's teachings that the strong must protect the weak, a philosophy he maintained even after his father, Shinjuro, descended into alcoholism and bitterness following his wife's death. This unwavering moral code would ultimately cost him his life against Akaza, but his final words to protect others and never give up inspired his surviving comrades throughout their remaining battles. Mitsuri Kanroji and Obanai Iguro shared the most romantic connection among the Hashira, though neither fully expressed their feelings until their final moments. Mitsuri had developed feelings for Obanai, finding comfort in how he always complimented her, shared meals with her, and gave her gifts like the green thigh-high stockings she wore. She viewed him as someone who accepted her unusual strength and appearance without judgment. Obanai's love for Mitsuri bordered on obsession, as talking with her allowed him to forget his traumatic past and feel like an ordinary person. He was extremely protective, even threatening Tanjiro for growing too close to her during training. However, Obanai's self-loathing due to his corrupt family bloodline prevented him from confessing, believing he needed to die fighting Muzan and be reborn in a peaceful world before he could be worthy of her. This tragic dynamic meant both died with love, confessed but unfulfilled, sharing hope for reincarnation together. Shinobu Kocho and Gyome Himejima represented the Hashira's intellectual and spiritual pillars respectively. Shinobu maintained close bonds with Mitsuri as one of only 2 female Hashira after her sister Kanae's death, teaching Mitsuri Western cooking and receiving companionship in return. Despite her cheerful facade, Shinobu harbored intense hatred for demons that killed her family and sister, driving her to develop poison-based combat techniques to compensate for her inability to decapitate demons due to her small frame. Her medical expertise proved invaluable to the core, treating injuries and developing the anti-Muzan drug with Tamayo. Gyome, as the eldest and strongest Hashira, commanded universal respect and often served as their de facto leader in Kagaya's absence. His deep faith and gentle nature contrasted with his immense physical power, and he possessed keen perception of others' characters through his heightened hearing despite blindness. He maintained friendly relationships with all Hashira, noting Kyojuro's optimism, Sanemi's hidden sensitivity, Shinobu's tendency to overwork herself, and Mitsuri's pleasant nature, with concern for her crush on Obanai. Sanemi Shinazugawa's abrasive personality and violent temper made him difficult to befriend, but beneath his hostility lay fierce protectiveness, particularly toward his younger brother Genya. His aggressive nature stemmed from losing his mother to demonification and subsequently killing her to protect his siblings, only to be called a murderer by a traumatized Genya. This drove Sanemi to push his brother away from demon slaying, wanting Genya to live normally rather than risk death. Despite his rough exterior, Sanemi got along well with Obanai Iguro, considering him his closest friend among the Hashira. He also displayed surprising gentleness toward Kagaya Ubuyashiki after understanding the master's genuine care for his demon slayers, and he talked fairly often with Shinobu due to her connection to Kanai Kocho, who had shown him kindness. His Mareshi blood made him particularly valuable against powerful demons, though this also increased his risk during combat. Tenjin Uzui brought strategic brilliance from his shinobi background, though he'd abandoned that life to protect his 3 wives from the harsh clan traditions. His flamboyant personality and self-proclaimed status as God of Festivals masked tactical genius and genuine care for subordinates, as demonstrated when he prioritized his wives and Tanjiro's survival over mission completion during the Entertainment District battle. He maintained positive relationships with most Hashira, with Gyome noting he talked big but was clear-headed and accurately assessed his own abilities. Muichiro Tokito, despite his youth and memory problems, possessed prodigious talent that earned Tengen's praise for becoming Hashira merely 2 months after joining the Corps. His aloof behavior wasn't arrogance, but rather emotional detachment from his amnesia, which Tanjiro's kindness eventually helped him overcome, allowing him to reconnect with his humanity and become more engaged with his fellow Hashira, even noticing Obanai's crush on Mitsuri with surprising emotional awareness. The Hashira's bonds extended beyond mere professional cooperation into genuine family, demonstrated when Mitsuri grabbed everyone into a group hug after defeating upper-ranked demons at the Swordsmith Village. When Gyome wept tears of joy at their victories, and when they coordinated their attacks against Muzan with perfect synchronization, born from years of mutual trust. Their willingness to sacrifice themselves for each other and for the mission represented the Corps' ultimate strength, not individual power, but collective determination powered by bonds of respect, friendship, and love. These connections made them formidable against even the strongest demons, as they fought for each other. In the twisted reality, where all 9 Hashira served Muzan as demons, the bonds that had once been their greatest strength became instruments of their deepest torment. News of Demon Mitsuri's hesitation spread through Muzan's network within hours of Tanjiro's encounter with her, carried by lesser demons who'd witnessed her fleeing from humans she could have easily killed. The information reached the other demon, Hashira, through Muzan's blood connection, and the reaction split them into factions that reflected their human natures fighting against demonic corruption. Demon Sanemi's response was immediate and vicious. When he learned that Mitsuri had stopped mid-attack and fled, he declared her weak, proclaiming that accepting their demon nature was the only way to maintain sanity. His Mareshi blood, amplified by demonic transformation, made him intoxicatingly powerful, and he'd quickly embrace the violence that his human self had always barely contained. During a chance encounter with Demon Tengen in an overlapping territory, Sanemi argued loudly that they should stop pretending to hate what they'd become. "We're stronger than we ever were as humans," he snarled, scars rippling as wind whipped around him. "Fighting it just makes the torture worse. Mitsuri's going to drive herself insane if she keeps resisting." Demon Tengen listened with calculating eyes, his shinobi training making him harder to read than the others. He'd been systematically hunting for his 3 wives, Makio, Suma, and Hinatsuru. With the obsessive focus that came from his blood, demon arts enhanced hearing, allowing him to detect heartbeats from vast distances. Whether he wanted to turn them into demons or consume them remained unclear even to himself, but the possessive obsession was undeniable. "Mitsuri always was too emotional," he responded carefully, "but emotions make us predictable. I've accepted what I am without letting it control me." Demon Muichiro represented the most tragic case of acceptance through absence. His memory issues had worsened catastrophically after transformation, leaving him in a constant state of confusion, where he sometimes forgot he was a demon entirely. During these episodes, he would revert to human behaviors, trying to help civilians, speaking politely, moving to protect rather than attack, only to have Muzan's blood curse violently reassert control, forcing him to slaughter those he'd momentarily wanted to save. The whiplash between these states was destroying what remained of his identity, creating a fragmentary existence where he couldn't remember why he kept crying or whose blood covered his hands. In stark contrast, Demon Rengoku and Demon Gyome formed an unspoken alliance of resistance, though they could never communicate directly or coordinate their actions under Muzan's watchful control. Demon Rengoku's eternal flames burned constantly around his body, but survivors reported that sometimes the flames would flicker and dim when he attacked, as if he was fighting to weaken his own strikes. During one mission assigned by Muzan to destroy a fortified resistance safe house, Rengoku's flames inexplicably failed to ignite several buildings, allowing dozens of civilians to escape before other demons arrived. Muzan punished him severely afterward, flooding his system with additional cursed blood that caused him to scream for hours as his flames burned hotter and hotter. But the Demon King couldn't determine if the failure was intentional resistance or simple combat error. Demon Gyome's resistance manifested differently, hidden within his prayers and the complex patterns of his chain weapon attacks. The stone Hashira's deep faith hadn't died with his transformation. Instead, it became his anchor against complete demonic corruption. He continued to pray constantly, and survivors swore they sometimes saw his attacks deliberately miss vital targets, or his earthquakes mysteriously fail to collapse buildings where humans sheltered. During one encounter, a resistance member reported hearing Gyome whisper, "Forgive me," repeatedly before attacking, and noticed that his stone manipulation powers seemed to create escape routes even as they destroyed the landscape. When questioned by other demons about his efficiency, Gyome would respond in his deep, calm voice that some prey escaped naturally, and forcing perfection would make him too predictable. The dynamic between Demon Obanai and Demon Mitsuri created the most heartbreaking tragedy among the transformed Hashira. After learning of her hesitation, Obanai began actively seeking her out, using his serpent-enhanced senses and Kaburamaru's tracking abilities to find her territories. When they finally met on a foggy mountain pass, 3 weeks after her encounter with Tanjiro, Mitsuri initially fled, terrified of what seeing him might reveal. But Obanai pursued relentlessly, not with hostility, but with desperate need, until she finally stopped running. They stood facing each other in the mist, two demons who'd loved each other as humans, now trapped in monstrous forms. Obanai's heterochromatic eyes held a clarity that demon eyes rarely possessed. "I know you stopped," he said, his voice muffled by the bandages he still wore to hide his scarred mouth. "I feel it too. The resistance, the knowledge that we're betraying everything we were." Mitsuri's tears flowed freely, mixing with the demon patterns on her face. "I can't stop thinking about them, Obanai, the people I've killed, their faces. I remember being human, wanting to protect them, and now," her voice broke, "Muzan's blood makes me hunt them. I can't stop my body even when my mind screams at me to stop." "I know." Obanai stepped closer, and for a moment, they were just two people in love, trapped in circumstances beyond their control. "But if we resist together, maybe we can find ways to minimize the damage. Small acts, warnings we leave behind, failures that seem like accidents." He hesitated, then reached out to touch her hand with his own, not as demons, but as the people they'd been. "I loved you as a human, Mitsuri. That hasn't changed even in this form." The moment of connection shattered when Muzan's blood curse activated in both simultaneously, his awareness detecting their resistance through the temporary emotional clarity they'd shared. Both collapsed, convulsing as demonic compulsion overwhelmed them. When they recovered, Muzan's voice echoed in their minds, "Touching, but futile. The next time you indulge such sentiment, I will force you to slaughter each other's former comrades while you watch, fully conscious and unable to stop." The threat worked. They fled in opposite directions. And when they encountered each other afterward, both pretended the conversation had never happened, playing their roles as loyal demons while the memory of that brief connection burned in their minds. Demon Shinobu represented perhaps the most intellectually tormented of the transformed Hashira. Her medical expertise and scientific mind remained fully intact, allowing her to understand exactly what had been done to them at a molecular level. Her blood demon art, the ability to create and manipulate toxins, was a cruel mockery of her human specialization in wisteria poisons. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent years developing poisons to kill demons, and now she was a demon whose power was creating poisons that only affected humans and other demons. In her former butterfly mansion, which she'd converted into a laboratory, Demon Shinobu spent her time when not on missions analyzing the curse in her own blood, conducting experiments on captured humans, which she performed with her characteristic gentle smile, even as she hated every moment, and meticulously documenting demonic physiology. Her notes were extensive and detailed, written in code that only someone with her medical knowledge could decipher. She was searching for weaknesses, looking for ways to counter Muzan's control, studying every aspect of demon biology for potential vulnerabilities. During one late-night research session, she sat alone, surrounded by vials of toxins and blood samples, and spoke to herself in her quiet voice. "Kane, if you could see me now, what would you say? Would you still believe demons and humans could coexist, even when the demons are your former comrades?" She mixed two chemicals together, creating a compound that would theoretically weaken Muzan's blood control temporarily. "I'm still fighting, sister, just like you asked. But I'm fighting from the inside now." Her experiments occasionally yielded results. Brief moments where she or another demon, Hashira, would experience reduced compulsion, lasting only seconds, but proving the curse wasn't absolutely unbreakable. She shared these findings with no one, instead hiding her research and continuing to smile her gentle, poisonous smile while serving Muzan perfectly. But in her coded notes, she'd written a message meant for any human who might eventually discover them. "The curse can be weakened. Keep searching for Blue Spider Lily. There is hope." Demon Gyu's isolation, already profound as a human, became almost absolute in demon form. He spoke even less than before, his dead calm technique now manifesting as an eerie stillness where even his demonic aura seemed to disappear. Other demons found him unsettling. He would stand motionless for hours, staring at nothing, and when he did move, it was with such sudden precision that lesser demons would flee. Upper Moons who encountered him reported that Demon Gyu seemed to be constantly fighting some internal battle, his jaw clenched and his hands trembling slightly even when his face remained expressionless. The truth was that Gyu was using his water-breathing techniques to maintain a constant state of meditation, retreating into his own mind to preserve what humanity he could. He'd discovered that by focusing intensely on memories of Sabito, his sister Tsutako, and his training with Urokodaki, he could create a mental barrier that slightly reduced Muzan's control. It didn't stop his body from obeying orders, but it gave him marginal ability to choose how efficiently he executed them. A mission that should take him an hour might take 3. Humans who should have died in his initial attack sometimes had seconds to begin fleeing. But the cost was devastating loneliness. His technique required such intense concentration that he couldn't risk communicating with others, even other demon Hashira. He existed in a prison of his own creation, sacrificing all connection to maintain fractional resistance. When Demon Shinobu tried to speak with him once, he turned away without acknowledging her, knowing that conversation would break his concentration and doom more people. She understood immediately, her observant nature recognizing the pattern, and she never tried again. Instead, she began leaving her coded research notes in places where he might find them, hoping he could use them without needing to interact. The secret sabotage efforts began small and scattered, each demon Hashira acting independently without coordination. Demon Rengoku's flames would mysteriously fail at critical moments. Demon Gyome's earthquakes would open escape routes. Demon Shinobu's poisons would occasionally be calibrated slightly wrong, buying victims extra minutes. Demon Gyu's attacks would be infinitesimally slower than necessary. Demon Obanai's serpents would sometimes strike non-vital areas. Demon Mitsuri's binding threads would be positioned where victims could escape if they moved quickly enough. None of these acts were enough to defy Muzan outright or prevent the overall massacre. Humans still died by the thousands at Demon Hashira hands. But the small resistances added up, a few dozen survivors here, a warning left behind there, intelligence accidentally revealed, a pattern created that observant resistance members might exploit. Each act of sabotage risked Muzan's terrible punishment, but the demon Hashira, who still fought their nature, continued regardless, clinging to fragments of their humanity. The divide among them became clearer as months passed. Senemi, Tengen, and Muichiro, during his demonic episodes, represented full or partial acceptance of their transformed state, either through embracing power, strategic calculation, or memory-damaged confusion. Rengoku, Gyome, Shinobu, Gyu, Obanai, and Mitsuri formed an unspoken resistance, each fighting the curse in their own way. Never able to communicate or coordinate, but united in their refusal to completely surrender their human souls. They existed in constant torment, aware of every atrocity they committed yet unable to stop, searching desperately for any way to undermine Muzan's control or help humanity survive. And in the shadows between them, intelligence flowed. Demon Shinobu's coded research notes, Demon Gyu's deliberate inefficiencies, Demon Rengoku's strategic failures. Demon Guillaume's whispered prayers containing warnings, Demon Obanai's serpent movements that inadvertently revealed patrol patterns, Demon Mitsuri's emotional displays that showed other demons the curse wasn't absolute. These fragments of resistance, invisible to Muzan but visible to each other and to the most observant resistance members, created the first possibility of hope. The knowledge that the demon Hashira weren't lost causes, that somewhere beneath demonic corruption, the warriors who'd once protected humanity still fought their war, even if that war was now against their own cursed blood. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Saga 6: The Impossible Battle. Demon Rengoku's Breaking Point. Kyojuro Rengoku embodied everything the Demon Slayer Corps represented: unwavering duty, boundless optimism, and the unshakable belief that those born strong existed to protect the weak. At 20 years old, he served as the Flame Hashira during the Taisho era, carrying forward a proud family lineage of flame-breathing users that stretched back generations. His distinctive appearance, long bright yellow hair with red streaks like flames, golden eyes that turned red around the irises, and his perpetual enthusiastic smile made him instantly recognizable throughout the Corps. The core of Rengoku's character traced back to his mother's deathbed teachings when he was still a child. Ruka Rengoku had instilled in her eldest son the fundamental principle that would guide his entire life: those blessed with greater ability bear a duty to protect those with less. This philosophy became his North Star, the unassailable truth around which his entire worldview revolved. Even years later, in his final moments dying from Akaza's attack, he would think of his mother's words and find peace in knowing he had fulfilled the promise made at her bedside. Rengoku's family situation grew tragically complicated after his mother's death. His father, Shinjuro, once the Flame Hashira himself, descended into alcoholism and bitter despair, abandoning his duties and growing increasingly aggressive toward his sons. Despite this harsh treatment, Kyojuro maintained deep respect and worry for his father, understanding that grief had twisted him. To his younger brother, Senjuro, Kyojuro showed nothing but encouragement and optimism, believing in him unconditionally despite Senjuro's lack of talent for swordsmanship. This unwavering positivity, even in the face of his own family's dysfunction, demonstrated the strength of his character. As the Flame Hashira, Kyojuro achieved absolute mastery of flame breathing despite teaching himself after his father stopped instructing him. Using only the 3-volume instruction book left by previous Flame Hashira, he trained himself to Hashira level through sheer dedication and natural talent. His techniques showcase the full spectrum of flame-based combat: unknowing fire for devastating horizontal dashes, rising scorching sun for upward arcing slashes, blazing universe for powerful downward attacks, blooming flame undulation for fluid circular defense, flame tiger for high-speed assault, and his ultimate technique Rengoku, an extremely high-speed dash followed by a devastating slash powerful enough to carve out the ground itself. Kyojuro's role extended beyond personal combat prowess as he served as mentor and inspiration to other demon slayers. He trained Mitsuri Kanroji when she first joined the Corps, teaching her flame breathing before she modified it into her unique love breathing style. His teaching method emphasized encouragement over criticism, always pointing out students' strengths and potential rather than dwelling on weaknesses. This nurturing approach, combined with his own visible dedication, made him beloved throughout the Corps and influenced an entire generation of demon slayers. The Mugen train arc represented Kyojuro's finest hour and his tragic end. When lower rank 1 Enmu fused with an entire train and trapped 200 passengers in death-inducing dreams, Kyojuro fought tirelessly to protect them across 5 different train cars without tiring. But the true test came after Enmu's defeat when upper rank 3 Akaza appeared, recognizing Kyojuro's strength immediately and offering to transform him into a demon so he could train for centuries and become stronger. Kyojuro's response encapsulated his entire philosophy and became one of the most defining moments in the series. He refused absolutely, declaring that growing old and dying was precisely what gave meaning and beauty to human life. He proclaimed that it was because humans age and die that their lives have value and nobility, and that strength meant nothing in regard to the flesh alone. This rejection of immortality in favor of meaningful mortality represented the fundamental divide between demons and humans, not power versus weakness, but purpose versus emptiness. The battle that followed pushed Kyojuro beyond all human limits. Despite Akaza's overwhelming speed and strength, Despite attacks faster than the eye could see, Kyojuro fought with perfect precision and unwavering resolve. When Akaza destroyed his left eye and shattered his ribs, he continued fighting. When his internal organs were damaged by powerful shockwaves, he maintained his stance. Even when Akaza's fist pierced completely through his solar plexus in a mortal wound, Kyojuro didn't fall, but instead grabbed Akaza and held him in place with grip strength that shocked the demon into disbelief. He held Akaza there, gripping his arm with the last of his strength, buying time until sunrise would destroy the demon. Only by ripping off his own arms could Akaza escape, fleeing into the shadows as dawn broke. In his final moments, Kyojuro spoke to Tanjiro with words that would echo through the remainder of the series. He told the young slayer to live with his head held high, to set his heart ablaze no matter how devastated he might feel, to grit his teeth and look straight ahead because time wouldn't wait for grief. Those final words became Tanjiro's driving force, the memory he returned to in moments of despair, the promise he would fulfill no matter the cost. Kyojuro died with a smile, secure in the knowledge that he had protected everyone on the train and inspired the next generation to carry forward his beliefs. In the timeline where all 9 Hashira served Muzan as demons, Kyojuro Rengoku's transformation represented perhaps the cruelest irony. A warrior whose entire existence had been dedicated to protecting the weak, now forced to slaughter them, his eternal flames burning not to inspire but to destroy. 3 months after Demon Mitsuri's hesitation created ripples through the demon Hashira, the resistance leadership gathered to make a desperate decision. They had lost hundreds of fighters, safe houses fell weakly, and supplies dwindled to nothing. Every major city now belonged to demons, with human survivors hiding in scattered wilderness enclaves that grew smaller each night. The resistance had been studying patterns among the demon Hashira's attacks, and one name kept appearing in reports that didn't quite fit the pattern of mindless slaughter. Demon Rengoku's territory encompassed the eastern mountain ranges he had once patrolled as a human. Survivors reported strange occurrences. His flames would sometimes flicker and fail at critical moments, allowing escapes that should have been impossible. Buildings that should have burned to ash sometimes remained standing. Multiple witnesses swore they had heard him whisper apologies just before attacking, his voice carrying the same tone as his human self, despite the demonic distortion. Tanjiro had spent 3 months training with the unnamed mentor, pushing his sun-breathing to new heights while studying everything the resistance had gathered about the demon Hashira. He proposed seeking out Demon Rengoku specifically, believing that if anyone's core convictions might break through demonic control, it would be the Flame Hashira, whose mother's teachings about protecting the weak had defined his entire existence. The mentor agreed, noting that Tanjiro's sun-breathing was the only thing that might keep him alive long enough to reach Rengoku's human consciousness. Fire against fire. The original breath style against its derivative. The journey to Rengoku's territory took 2 weeks of careful travel through demon-controlled areas. They found him at dawn on the 3rd day of searching, standing atop a cliff overlooking a burned village, eternal flames wreathing his body and dancing yellow and red fire that never extinguished. He looked almost exactly as he had in life, except for demonic patterns marking his face in flame-like designs, his eyes holding a predatory emptiness, and flames that burned with unnatural brightness. When he smiled at detecting their presence, it was the right shape, but completely wrong, too wide, too hungry, missing the genuine warmth that had defined him. Demon Rengoku expressed enthusiastic interest in Tanjiro's sun-breathing mastery with the same vocal tone he'd possessed as a human, but hollowed out as if something wore his speech patterns like a costume. The battle that followed was catastrophic in scale. Demon Rengoku moved with speed that made even his human self seem slow, his flames trailing like a comet as he closed distances in heartbeats. The heat was incredible. His eternal flames burned hot enough to melt stone and turn sand to glass, far exceeding any human technique's temperature. Tanjiro found himself in a desperate struggle for survival as Demon Rengoku unleashed his full arsenal of flame-breathing techniques amplified to nightmarish levels by demonic power. Unknowing fire came at speeds that shouldn't be possible. Flame Tiger manifested 3 times larger than its human version with a roar that shook mountains, and Blazing Universe split cliff faces with its downward force. Every time Tanjiro managed to land a sun-breathing strike that should have been crippling, severing arms, opening massive torso slashes, cutting deep into legs, the wounds healed almost instantly through demonic regeneration. Only sun-breathing attacks left lingering burn marks that took slightly longer to heal, proving the original breath style's effectiveness. Throughout the battle, Tanjiro kept speaking between exchanges, even as his body accumulated injuries faster than he could treat them. He talked about Senjuro waiting for his brother to return, about Shinjiro sobering up and training again to fight Muzan, about the 200 people Rengoku had protected on the Mugen train, about Mitsuri, who had been his student. He emphasized Ruka's deathbed teachings that the strong exist to protect the weak, the core conviction that had defined Rengoku's entire existence. Each mention caused Demon Rengoku's flames to flicker momentarily, confusion crossing his features before demonic instinct reasserted control. The breakthrough came when Tanjiro pulled out the flame-patterned sword guard that Senjuro had given him, holding it up clearly in the firelight. He explained that Rengoku's little brother had given it to him to carry forward what the flame Hashira had stood for, that Senjuro believed in people because Kyojuro had taught him to believe, that the family hadn't given up hope. Something broke in Demon Rengoku's expression at seeing this tangible connection to his human past. His flames guttered and restarted erratically as he gripped his head, tears evaporating instantly from the heat, his voice barely a whisper as he spoke his brother's name. For the first time since transformation, Demon Rengoku's consciousness fully surfaced. His flames died completely for several seconds, leaving him standing in ordinary morning light, looking almost human except for demon markings. He acknowledged Tanjiro's words with clarity in his gaze, admitting he remembered his mother's teachings, his duty, and what he was supposed to be. The flames reignited, but differently, cleaner, brighter, more controlled, as he explained that he had been fighting Muzan's control all along, trying to minimize damage, but unable to break through completely until reminded of his foundation. Muzan's awareness descended like a crushing weight, black veins spreading across Demon Rengoku's skin as the curse tried to reassert complete control. But Demon Rengoku remained standing through visible, tremendous effort, fighting a war inside his own skull, even as blood leaked from his eyes, nose, and ears from the punishment of resistance. With his body starting to move against his will, he forced himself to deliver a critical message before Muzan could suppress him completely. He shouted for Tanjiro to set his heart ablaze no matter what happened, revealing that all the other Hashira were fighting internally too, with some closer to breaking through than others. He urged Tanjiro not to give up on them, to find those closest to remembering, and help them break through their demonic control. He promised to keep sabotaging his own missions and saving who he could, asking Tanjiro to tell his family that he still remembered his promise to protect the weak, and was still trying to fulfill his duty. Muzan's control snapped back with overwhelming force, Demon Rengoku's eyes going empty and predatory as black flames erupted outward. But instead of attacking Tanjiro, he turned and fled at blurring speed, using his remaining willpower to remove himself from the situation before being forced to kill, the same choice Mitsuri had made. As Demon Rengoku vanished into the distance, leaving scorched trails across the mountainside, Tanjiro collapsed from accumulated damage, his body finally giving out but his mission accomplished. The impact of Demon Rengoku's breakthrough rippled outward through Muzan's blood connection. Every demon Hashira felt the moment when Rengoku's consciousness had fully surfaced, when human values temporarily overpowered the curse, when he chose resistance over obedience. The reaction split along factional lines that had been developing over months. Demon Senemi felt it and snarled in contempt, viewing it as weakness, though even his dismissal couldn't hide his unease about what it meant for the curse's supposed absolute control. Demon Tenjin processed the information with his calculating mind, adding it to his tactical assessment of growing accidents among Demon Hashira missions, confirming his suspicion that resistance was possible. Demon Guillaume prayed with tears streaming down his face, his deep faith finding hope in knowing another had successfully resisted. Demon Shinobu's scientific mind immediately began analyzing what she had felt, recognizing that emotional appeals and fundamental beliefs could create vectors for weakening Muzan's control. Already mentally revising her coded research notes with new hypotheses. Demon Gyu's perpetual meditation technique wavered as he felt the resonance, allowing himself something approaching hope for the first time in months. Demon Mitsuri sobbed openly, knowing that Rengoku had accomplished what she had only partially managed, giving her strength to intensify her own sabotage efforts by creating more obvious failures. Demon Obanai immediately sought out Mitsuri despite the risk, needing confirmation that she had felt it too, that they weren't alone in their resistance. When they met briefly before Muzan's attention could focus on them, they coordinated sabotage efforts for the first time, just an agreement to create accidents in overlapping territories, allowing more humans to escape, but representing the first direct cooperation among resisting demon Hashira. The resistance network exploded with activity within days. Tanjiro's survival of direct confrontation with demon Rengoku, combined with his successful breakthrough to the flame Hashira's consciousness, transformed him into a legendary figure among survivors. They began calling him the boy who can save demons, and the name spread like wildfire through scattered human enclaves. The unnamed mentor gathered resistance leaders to assess what they had learned, noting that Rengoku had confirmed all demon Hashira were fighting internally to varying degrees, with some closer to breaking through than others. New missions deployed across demon territories focused on intelligence gathering about demon Hashira behavioral patterns rather than combat operations. Which ones hesitated? Which showed signs of internal conflict? Which could be approached with highest breakthrough potential versus immediate death? They compiled priority lists identifying Demon Mitsuri, Demon Rengoku, Demon Gyomei, and Demon Obanai as having highest breakthrough potential based on reported incidents of deliberate sabotage and non-lethal attacks. Demon Gyu and Demon Shinobu showed moderate potential through isolated behaviors, suggesting internal resistance. Demon Sanemi, Demon Tenjin, and Demon Muichiro appeared to have lowest potential due to embracing demon nature, calculating detachment, or memory issues, preventing consistent resistance. The strategic implications were enormous. If Tanjiro could successfully reach even 3 or 4 more demon Hashira, they could potentially create a network of internal saboteurs, dramatically increasing human survival rates. The demon Hashira wouldn't fight Muzan openly. That would result in immediate brutal punishment, but could continue their pattern of accidents and failures, allowing humans to escape and the resistance to survive. Tanjiro spent 2 weeks recovering while his mentor pushed him to analyze what had worked with Rengoku and what could be applied to others, emphasizing that he had reminded Rengoku of his core purpose and foundational belief, rather than just nostalgia for people he knew. They began preparing psychological profiles on each demon Hashira, compiling philosophies, motivations, and deeply held beliefs as humans. These weren't military briefings, but roadmaps to reaching humanity buried under demonic curse, identifying what had driven each Hashira and what would speak to their isolated souls. The dossiers would guide future confrontations, helping Tanjiro understand how to reach each individual consciousness through their unique values and convictions. Muzan's response to Demon Rengoku's breakthrough was immediate and terrifying. He couldn't directly control Demon Hashira's every action without dedicating constant attention that would leave him vulnerable, but he could punish resistance severely. Demon Rengoku spent 3 days in agony as Muzan flooded his system with cursed blood, causing his body to burn from inside, while regeneration kept him alive to experience every moment. Other demon Hashira felt echoes of this punishment through their blood connection, a warning of what awaited defiance. But the punishment had an unintended effect by proving that resistance was possible and Muzan feared it. If the curse was absolute, why punish resistance so severely? The very act of making an example demonstrated that Demon Hashira had agency, that their choices mattered, that Muzan's control wasn't as perfect as he wanted everyone to believe. Demon Rengoku endured the punishment without breaking, his indomitable will as strong in death as it had been in life. When it ended, he returned to his territory and missions, but now his flames failed even more frequently. Buildings remained standing that should have burned. Survivors found themselves facing attacks that missed by inches, and warnings appeared carved into trees or burned into ground, indicating patrol routes to avoid. The impossible had been proven possible twice now. Humanity had been given something it had lacked since the night the Hashira fell: genuine hope. Not desperate hope of avoiding extinction one more day, but hope that the fallen could be saved, that humanity's strongest warriors might return to fight for their original cause. 2 demon Hashira had successfully resisted, with 4 more showing strong signs of internal conflict. The resistance had transformed from scattered survivors into an organized force with a concrete mission. Muzan, for the first time since orchestrating the Hashira's fall, faced the possibility that his greatest weapons might turn against him. The war for humanity's survival had entered a new phase where demons could be saved instead of only destroyed, where the fallen could rise again, where the impossible became merely improbable. The eternal flames of the flame Hashira had blazed through demonic darkness to illuminate a path forward, and Tanjiro would walk that path no matter where it led or what it cost, until every last demon Hashira remembered who they truly were. And before we continue the video, make sure you're subscribed to us. Now let's move on to the next saga. Saga 7, The Kill Squad. 2 weeks after Demon Rengoku's public resistance and Tanjiro's survival of their confrontation, Muzan's rage reached a boiling point that sent tremors through every demon connected to his blood. The impossible had occurred twice now, with both Demon Mitsuri and Demon Rengoku managing to surface their human consciousnesses and actively resist his control. And worse, the human boy responsible for these breakthroughs had survived both encounters. Reports filtering back through Muzan's demon network painted an alarming picture of shifting momentum in the war. Human survivors were calling Tanjiro the boy who can save demons, his name spreading like wildfire through scattered resistance enclaves and transforming him from unknown upstart into legendary figure representing hope that fallen Hashira could be reclaimed. The resistance was growing bolder, their missions shifting from pure survival to active intelligence gathering about demon Hashira behavioral patterns, and the whispers about possible salvation were beginning to counteract the despair that had gripped humanity for months. Muzan recognized the existential threat this presented to his carefully constructed dominance. If Tanjiro succeeded in reaching 3 or 4 more Demon Hashira and triggering similar breakthroughs, the entire foundation of Muzan's control would crack. The Demon Hashira were supposed to be his ultimate weapons, overwhelming force that made human resistance futile, but they were becoming potential liabilities if their human emotions and convictions could override his blood curse even momentarily. The psychological impact on surviving humans was equally dangerous, because hope was far more threatening than despair to Muzan's plans for complete domination. Desperate people gave up and died quietly, but hopeful people fought back and created problems. He needed to eliminate Tanjiro immediately and decisively, sending a message so brutal and absolute that any hope of saving the demon Hashira would die with the boy. The solution required careful selection because sending just any powerful demon would risk another embarrassing failure. Muzan needed Demon Hashira who would not hesitate, who would not be swayed by emotional appeals or memories of their human purpose, who could work together efficiently to ensure the target had no chance of escape. After analyzing the behavioral reports and resistance patterns he'd observed through his blood connection, Muzan identified 3 Demon Hashira whose current psychological states made them perfect for this execution mission. Demon Sanemi Shinazugawa had fully embraced his demon nature, viewing acceptance as the only path to maintaining sanity and actively scorning those showing weakness through resistance. His Marechi blood made him intoxicatingly powerful as a demon, and his naturally aggressive personality combined with demonic amplification created a hunter who would relish the kill. The fierce protectiveness he'd once shown toward his younger brother Genya and fellow Hashira had been completely inverted into eagerness to destroy anything Muzan commanded, his transformation so complete he was almost unrecognizable from his human self. Demon Tenjin Uzui represented cold calculation, his shinobi training and tactical mind, making him approach missions with detached professionalism. As a human, Tenjin had been the sound Hashira whose entertainment district battle against upper rank 6, Gyutaro and Daki had showcased incredible tactical brilliance despite being severely poisoned and losing his left hand. His self-created sound breathing combined shinobi expertise with superhuman hearing to produce devastating techniques. His first form Roar slammed massive dual Nichiren cleavers down with thunder-like force. Fourth form constant resounding slashes created defensive barriers by spinning his swords rapidly. And fifth form String Performance rotated his chain-connected cleavers at high speed for continuous slashing. His musical score ability was his true genius, analyzing combat and deconstructing enemy attack rhythms into sound patterns he could read like sheet music, giving complete understanding of opponent habits and blind spots. His enhanced hearing provided echolocation capabilities, allowing him to locate battles underground and determine how many people were present just by listening. His specialized equipment included dozens of explosive beads that detonated with slightest friction and gigantic dual cleavers connected by chains, his raw speed making him the fastest runner among all Hashira. As a demon, these already formidable abilities were amplified beyond human limits, and while he hadn't fully embraced demon nature like Sanemi, he also hadn't shown active resistance patterns like Rengoku or Gyomei, instead treating his demonic existence as strategic reality requiring adaptation. His tracking abilities and combat expertise made him ideal for hunting a mobile target across difficult terrain. The third selection was more complicated and infinitely more cruel. Demon Gyomei Himejima had shown consistent patterns of resistance through subtle sabotage and whispered prayers, his deep Buddhist faith serving as anchor against complete corruption. As a human during Hashira training arc, Gyomei had been the physically strongest and most respected Hashira, who led the first stage of training focused on stamina and endurance. His brutally demanding regimen pushed demon slayers to absolute limits, and despite his stern exterior that would frequently yell at trainees for weaknesses, he genuinely cared deeply for every person under his command, refusing to eat until the last trainee returned, and personally searching mountains to find any who got lost. His Buddhist faith had served as his anchor and guiding philosophy. His blind eyes seeing truths about human nature others missed, he would weep openly while praying, moved by both demon cruelty and human courage. His unique Kusarigama weapon, consisting of spiked flail connected by chain to axe, required immense strength to wield, and his stone breathing emphasized overwhelming power that created earthquakes and shattered landscapes. But as a demon, this gentle giant's resistance wasn't strong enough to allow outright defiance, only enough to cause internal torment while his body still obeyed orders. Muzan could force Gyomei to participate in hunting Tanjiro, making him complicit in destroying humanity's hope while his conscious mind screamed in protest. This would serve dual purposes of eliminating the target while simultaneously punishing and breaking one of the most resistant demon Hashira through psychological torture. If Gyomei helped kill the one human who might save him, what reason would he have to continue resisting? The despair would crush him more effectively than any direct punishment. Muzan's command rippled through his blood connection with absolute authority, 3 demon Hashira receiving their orders simultaneously across different territories. They were to converge on the mountain region where Tanjiro had last been spotted, use their combined tracking abilities to hunt him down and eliminate him with extreme prejudice. No speeches, no hesitation, no allowing him any opportunity to speak or reach for their humanity. This was pure execution. The command came wrapped in Muzan's overwhelming will that made defiance nearly impossible, his consciousness flooding their systems like poison to ensure compliance. Demon Sanemi grinned savagely upon receiving the order, eager to prove his superiority by destroying this human who had become far too troublesome. Demon Tenjin processed the tactical requirements with calculating efficiency, already planning optimal search patterns and coordination strategies. Demon Gyomei's response was tears evaporating from heat of his demonic body as he whispered prayers for forgiveness, knowing he couldn't refuse the order, but desperately hoping for some miracle that would prevent him from being forced to kill the boy who represented hope. The intelligence network that Demon Shinobu had been carefully constructing through coded research notes intercepted fragments of the plan within days of Muzan issuing the order. Her scientific mind had been analyzing the blood curse constantly, documenting patterns in how Muzan's control manifested, and identifying brief windows where his attention divided across all demons, created microscopic gaps. She couldn't communicate directly with other demon Hashira or with the resistance without triggering Muzan's awareness, but her coded notes, hidden throughout her territory, contained enough information for observant humans to piece together warnings. The latest message carved into a tree using a pattern only someone with medical knowledge would recognize as intentional spelled out a terrifying revelation. Kill squad formed, 3 targets converging on eastern mountains. Tanjiro in extreme danger. A resistance scout discovered the message during routine patrol and immediately dispatched runners to every nearby safe house with orders to locate and warn Tanjiro before the demon Hashira arrived. Tanjiro received the warning while recovering in a hidden cave system 3 days into the hunt. His injuries from the demon Rengoku encounter finally healed enough for travel. The unnamed mentor who had been training him recognized immediately that attempting to fight 3 demon Hashira simultaneously was suicide, explaining that even if Tanjiro could potentially reach one of them through emotional appeals, like with Rengoku and Mitsuri, he couldn't reach 3 at once while also defending himself from lethal attacks. The mentor urged immediate evacuation to distant territories outside the search zone, abandoning the eastern mountains entirely until the kill squad disbanded. But Tanjiro refused to run without understanding who comprised this kill squad and whether any of them might be reachable, arguing that intelligence about which demon Hashira actively resisted versus actively embraced their nature was crucial for future mission planning. If he could observe them in combat and survive, the information gathered could save countless lives by helping the resistance prioritize which demon Hashira to approach. The mentor reluctantly agreed, but insisted on revised objectives that prioritized survival and intelligence gathering over any attempt at breakthrough. Tanjiro was to observe from maximum distance using terrain and camouflage, avoid direct confrontation unless absolutely necessary, and if forced into combat, his only goal was escape rather than reaching their humanity. The mentor established evacuation routes through the mountain passes with resistance members stationed at intervals who could provide diversions or medical assistance if needed. Additional scouts were deployed to monitor demon Hashira movements and provide early warning before the kill squad could establish an encirclement. Everyone understood this was a desperate gamble with minimal chance of success, but Tanjiro's conviction that understanding the enemy was worth the risk convinced them to support his decision rather than let him go alone. Demon Tengen was the first to arrive in the target zone, his enhanced hearing and echolocation abilities making him the natural vanguard for any tracking operation. He moved through the mountainous terrain with supernatural silence, not disturbing even the air as he passed, his shinobi training amplified to impossible levels by demonic enhancement. Every few hundred meters, he would pause and listen, analyzing thousands of sounds simultaneously from across miles of landscape, filtering out wind and animal noises to focus on anything suggesting human presence. His echolocation painted mental maps of cave systems and hidden valleys by listening to how sound reflected off surfaces, identifying potential hiding spots where targets might shelter. The dual Nichiren cleavers on his back gleamed in moonlight, their massive size seeming unwieldy until one watched how effortlessly he could draw and wield them despite their weight. His eye makeup and gemstone headdress remained from his human life, flashy decoration now seeming mockingly out of place on a demon hunting humans. Though the predatory calculation in his eyes contained none of the boastful warmth he'd once displayed. Demon Tsunemi arrived from the south like a storm, his approach far less subtle but infinitely more terrifying. The wind-breathing techniques he'd mastered as a human had become devastating natural disasters with demonic amplification, creating actual tornadoes and wind blades that carved through entire forests when he moved at full speed. His Marechi blood as a demon produced an aroma so intoxicating to other demons that weaker ones would become confused or frenzied just catching his scent, but he radiated such overwhelming bloodlust that none dared approach. He wasn't trying to hide or move quietly because he didn't need to, his strategy being to terrify the target into panicking and making mistakes that would reveal their location. The scars covering his body from countless battles remained, now appearing like trophies rather than wounds, and his grin was sharp enough to cut as he anticipated the upcoming slaughter. Demon Gyome approached last, moving slowly as if every step required tremendous effort despite his immense physical strength. His prayers were constant streams of whispered words begging forgiveness and seeking strength to resist what he knew he couldn't resist, tears flowing endlessly down his face and evaporating from demonic heat before reaching the ground. The massive kusarigama he wielded seemed heavier than before, the chain dragging behind him leaving deep furrows in earth as if the weapon itself mourned being used for this purpose. His blind eyes saw nothing and everything, perceiving the world through vibrations and spiritual awareness that made his faith tangible. Gyome was the only one of the three actively fighting against Muzan's control, even as his body obeyed orders, his consciousness screaming in protest while his demon instincts drove him forward toward the target. The internal war was visible in how his movements would occasionally falter or hesitate for split seconds before demonic programming reasserted itself, creating rhythm of resistance and compliance that caused him tremendous anguish. The three demon Hashira converged on Tanjiro's location with terrifying efficiency, their combined tracking abilities making concealment nearly impossible. Demon Tengen's echolocation pinpointed the cave system, where Tanjiro had been hiding within hours of beginning the search. His enhanced hearing detecting the subtle sound of a heartbeat and breathing from hundreds of meters away. He signaled Demon Tsunemi and Demon Gyome through methods that needed no words, shinobi hand signals, and deliberate sound cues that coordinated their approach into a perfect three-sided encirclement, cutting off all escape routes. They moved with the practiced coordination of warriors who'd fought together for years, their individual strengths complementing each other to create an inescapable net. Demon Senemi took the aggressive frontal approach, wind techniques demolishing the cave entrance and forcing anyone inside to evacuate into open terrain. Demon Tengen covered the eastern and northern routes with explosive beads placed at strategic intervals that would detonate if anyone tried passing, creating kill zones impossible to cross without taking severe damage. Demon Gyome blocked the western route simply by standing there, his massive presence and overwhelming strength making him an impassable wall. Tanjiro emerged from the collapsing cave at dawn, sun-breathing, keeping his movements swift enough to avoid being crushed by falling rock but not fast enough to escape the encirclement before it closed. He found himself in a small mountain clearing surrounded on three sides by Demon Hashira, their combined presence so overwhelming that the air itself felt heavier and harder to breathe. For several seconds, none of them moved, the Demon Hashira assessing this target who had become such a problem for Muzan, while Tanjiro evaluated which, if any of them might show signs of resistance worth attempting to reach. The dynamic was immediately apparent through observation. Demon Sanemi radiated eager bloodlust and was clearly committed to the kill. Demon Tengen maintained calculating detachment while analyzing optimal attack patterns. And Demon Gyome stood with tears flowing and lips moving in prayer despite his body being positioned to attack. The battle erupted with shocking speed and violence. Three Demon Hashira attacking simultaneously from different directions in coordinated assault designed to overwhelm defenses through sheer force and tactical variety. Demon Senemi's wind-breathing techniques came first as slashing vacuum blades created from arm movements, generating multiple rotating wind slashes that approached from angles impossible to block simultaneously. Demon Tengen's explosive beads detonated around the perimeter, forcing Tanjiro toward the center of the clearing, while his dual Nichiren cleavers came spinning through the air on their chain in fifth form string performance, creating a continuous rotating slash that left no gaps in coverage. Demon Gyome's chain flail came crashing down with enough force to crater Earth in first form serpentinite bipolar, creating a whipping strike that moved faster than something so massive should be capable of moving. The combined assault would have killed most Demon Slayers in the opening seconds, but Tanjiro's sun-breathing mastery and experience from previous Demon Hashira encounters allowed him to weave between attacks with desperate precision, using Hinokami Kagura forms to create brief defensive zones while looking for openings to escape. Demon Senemi's fighting style as a demon was pure aggression amplified to nightmare levels, his wind-breathing techniques combining with demonic bloodlust to create overwhelming offensive pressure. His fourth form, Rising Dust Storm, generated a spiraling wind tunnel that caught everything within radius and shredded it with razor wind blades, forcing Tanjiro to use Sun-Breathing's defensive capabilities to create countercurrents that deflected the worst damage. The demon's Marechi blood gave off intoxicating scent that made maintaining focus difficult, and his speed exceeded what Tanjiro had experienced even against Demon Rengoku. Demon Sanemi showed absolutely no hesitation or internal conflict. Every attack designed for maximum lethality, his demonic instincts and human aggressive personality merged into perfect killing intent. He taunted Tanjiro between exchanges with scornful words about wasting time trying to save demons who didn't want saving, how embracing power was the only rational choice, how pathetic it was to cling to human weakness when demon strength offered so much more. Demon Tengen's approach was entirely different, his shinobi training and calculating mind making him the most dangerous through tactical precision rather than raw aggression. His musical score technique was actively analyzing Tanjiro's movements and combat rhythm, each exchange adding more information to the mental sheet music he was constructing. The demon's enhanced hearing tracked every footstep, breath, and heartbeat, building a complete profile of Tanjiro's physical capabilities and fighting style that would allow perfect counters once the score completed. His fourth form, constant resounding slashes, created defensive barriers of spinning blades whenever Tanjiro attempted to close distance, while his explosive beads were placed with surgical precision to limit movement options and create kill zones where multiple attacks would converge. Demon Tengen said nothing during combat, maintaining complete focus on the tactical objective with professional detachment, though his eyes occasionally flickered with something that might have been calculation or might have been buried doubt about what he'd become. Demon Gyomei represented the most heartbreaking element of the battle, his overwhelming strength and stone-breathing mastery being used against his will to corner and damage Tanjiro while his consciousness screamed in protest. His attacks were the most powerful by far, single strikes from his flail creating earthquakes that knocked Tanjiro off his feet, creating defensive armor that made counterattacking him nearly impossible. But crucially, his attacks kept missing vital targets by inches or arriving fractionally slower than they should. Subtle sabotage that Muzan's control couldn't detect because the differences were so minute. When his flail cratered Earth near Tanjiro, the impact would create flying debris that actually provided momentary cover. When his chain strikes cut through the air, they would subtly corral Tanjiro toward the western route rather than toward the other two demon Hashira. His prayers were constant and audible between attacks, whispered words, begging forgiveness and asking for strength, creating an audio rhythm that seemed almost like warnings about incoming attacks if one listened carefully enough. Tanjiro recognized Demon Gyomei's subtle resistance within the first minute of combat, his experience with Demon Rengoku and Demon Mitsuri allowing him to identify the pattern of deliberate failures versus genuine attempts to kill. This recognition shaped his entire tactical approach because while he couldn't defeat 3 Demon Hashira simultaneously, he might be able to exploit Demon Gyomei's sabotage to create an escape route through the western direction. He began deliberately positioning himself where Demon Gyomei's attacks would force him westward, using Sun Breathing's mobility techniques to stay ahead of Demon Sanemi's relentless aggression and Demon Tenjin's explosive traps, while watching for the moment when Demon Gyomei's next sabotaged attack would create the opening needed. Between dodging lethal techniques, Tanjiro attempted the psychological warfare approach that had worked with Demon Rengoku, shouting about Gyomei's faith and gentle nature even as his body accumulated cuts and burns from near misses. He reminded the blind demon of how he'd wept for every trainee who struggled during Hashira training, how his Buddhist faith had taught him that all life was precious and suffering must be minimized, how he'd refused to eat until the last trainee returned safely because every life under his command mattered. Each mention caused Demon Gyomei's prayers to intensify and his attacks to hesitate microscopically longer, tears flowing faster as something in the words resonated with the human consciousness still fighting inside. Tanjiro emphasized that giving in to despair wasn't Buddhist philosophy, that faith meant believing in possibility of redemption even when circumstances seemed hopeless, that the gentle giant who'd cared so deeply about protecting others was still there underneath the demon curse. Demon Sanemi responded to these attempts at psychological warfare with contemptuous laughter and increased aggression, making it clear he had zero interest in being reached or saved. Demon Tenjin simply adjusted his tactical approach to account for Tanjiro's divided attention, using the distraction created by emotional appeals to complete his musical score analysis faster. But Demon Gyomei's response was visible breakdown in his coordination, his body beginning to shake as human consciousness and demonic programming warred more intensely inside him. Muzan's blood curse activating with painful force to suppress the resistance. Black veins spread across his skin, similar to what had happened with Demon Rengoku, punishment for fighting the control. But Demon Gyomei continued praying louder as if the words themselves could shield him from Muzan's wrath. The critical moment came when Demon Tenjin's musical score reached completion, his eyes gleaming with predatory satisfaction as the full pattern of Tanjiro's combat style resolved into perfect clarity. He could now predict every dodge, every strike, every defensive technique with absolute accuracy, making continued survival impossible. Demon Tenjin coordinated with Demon Sanemi through subtle signals, preparing a combined assault that would exploit every blind spot and weakness the musical score had identified. The explosive beads were positioned in a pattern that would funnel Tanjiro directly into Demon Sanemi's waiting wind blades, regardless of which direction he dodged. With Demon Gyomei's position blocking the only remaining escape route, it was tactically perfect, the inevitable conclusion of a hunt conducted by 3 master warriors against a single opponent who'd already been pushed past his limits. But Demon Tenjin's final strike that should have connected with perfect precision and ended the hunt missed by a hand's width, his blade cutting through empty air where Tanjiro's neck should have been based on the musical score's prediction. The miss was too perfect to be accidental, a deliberate miscalculation that only someone with Demon Tenjin's tactical brilliance could have executed while making it appear like target unpredictability. In that same instant, Demon Guillaume's flail came crashing down in what appeared to be devastating final blow, but the impact created an explosion of stone and dust that obscured visibility, while simultaneously launching Tanjiro toward the western escape route with the force of the shockwave, rather than crushing him. The coordination was so subtle that even Demon Tsunemi didn't immediately recognize what had happened, his follow-up wind technique striking through empty dust clouds, while Tanjiro used the precious seconds of confusion to activate Sun Breathing's fastest movement technique and flee westward at maximum speed. Muzan's fury descended on both Demon Tenjin and Demon Guillaume simultaneously, his consciousness flooding their systems with agony as punishment for the subtle sabotage he detected too late to prevent. Both demons collapsed as black veins spread across their entire bodies, blood curse activating with intensity that made them scream despite their enhanced pain tolerance. But the damage was done, and Tanjiro was already gone, vanishing into the forest with injuries that would have killed normal humans, but that he'd learned to push through thanks to Sun Breathing's enhancement of physical capabilities and healing. The resistance members stationed along the evacuation route provided covering fire with what few weapons they had, creating enough chaos and distraction that Demon Tsunemi's pursuit lost the trail within minutes. The hunt had failed despite overwhelming tactical advantage and perfect coordination, proof that even Demon Hashira forced into service, as Muzan's weapons retained enough humanity to sabotage missions when their core convictions were reached. But the cost was severe, and the lessons learned were complicated. Tanjiro survived but barely, his body pushed even closer to its absolute limits, and he'd gathered crucial intelligence, but at the price of nearly dying. The intelligence confirmed what resistance leadership had suspected. Demon Tsunemi represented lowest priority who'd fully accepted demon nature. Demon Tenjin could resist subtly through calculating pragmatism, but functioned primarily through cold logic rather than emotional conviction, and Demon Guillaume's resistance was stronger and more active, moving him into the same priority category as Demon Rengoku, Demon Mitsuri, and Demon Obanai as Hashira, who might be reachable if approached correctly. The most disturbing lesson was that Muzan had learned from the previous breakthroughs and was adapting his tactics, recognizing that his greatest weapons were also potential liabilities and becoming more careful about how he deployed them. The formation of a kill squad specifically designed to eliminate Tanjiro showed strategic thinking and willingness to commit multiple Demon Hashira to single targets when necessary. If Muzan continued evolving his approach, using the Demon Hashira more carefully and ruthlessly, the window for saving them might be closing faster than anyone anticipated. The race against time had become more desperate because every day that passed with Demon Hashira under Muzan's control meant more atrocities committed in their names, more psychological damage, making eventual recovery harder, and more risk that even the resistant ones would eventually break and accept their demon nature as inevitable. The kill squad's failure sent ripples through Muzan's entire network, every demon connected to his blood, feeling his rage at the botched execution and subsequent punishment of Demon Tengen and Demon Guillaume. The other demon, Hashira, absorbed the lesson that resistance carried severe consequences, but was still possible if executed carefully. Demon Mitsuri and Demon Obanai, already coordinating subtle sabotage efforts, intensified their attempts while being more careful about detection. Demon Rengoku continued his pattern of strategic failures that allowed humans to escape, emboldened by knowing others were resisting as well. Demon Shinobu adjusted her coded messages to include information about the kill squad's failure, documenting it as further evidence that Muzan's control wasn't absolute. Even Demon Gyu's meditation patterns shifted slightly, incorporating knowledge that he wasn't alone in fighting the internal war. For Tanjiro and the Resistance, the implications were clear and urgent. They had identified Demon Hashira who could potentially be saved and those who were currently beyond reach, intelligence that would guide all future mission planning. The priority list was firm. Demon Guillaume, Demon Rengoku, Demon Mitsuri, and Demon Obanai showed active resistance, making them reachable. Demon Shinobu and Demon Gyu showed signs of internal conflict, suggesting possible breakthroughs with right approach. Demon Tsunemi, Demon Tenjin, and Demon Muichiro represented lowest priority as either accepting demon nature or too compromised by calculating detachment or memory issues. But time was running out because Muzan was learning and adapting, his tactics evolving to counter the breakthrough strategy. And the longer Demon Hashira remained under his control, the more psychological damage they would accumulate. The war for humanity's survival had entered its most critical phase, where every decision about which Demon Hashira to approach and when could mean the difference between saving humanity's strongest warriors or watching them sink deeper into demonic corruption beyond any hope of recovery. Saga 8: The Final Dawn. Throughout the anime's 4 seasons and Muzan train movie, Muzan Kibutsuji represented the ultimate evil and absolute threat to humanity. His cruelty manifested in every interaction. During his first appearance in Season 1's Asakusa, he casually murdered innocent bystanders to cover his presence and transformed a random man into a demon just to create chaos. His treatment of the lower ranks was particularly telling, executing nearly all of them for their failures without hesitation, showing even his own demon subordinates were disposable tools. The terror they showed in his presence revealed how his organization was built on fear rather than loyalty. The blood curse, connecting Muzan to all demons, represented his most powerful control mechanism. Every demon contained his blood and was connected to his consciousness, allowing him to monitor their thoughts, punish disobedience, and destroy them remotely if they defied him or spoke his name aloud. This made organizing against him nearly impossible because any demon plotting rebellion would be detected instantly. Killing Muzan would theoretically destroy all demons simultaneously since they all derived their existence from his blood, making him both the source of the demon threat and the single point of failure that could end it. Sunlight stood as the only guaranteed weakness all demons shared, established from the first episode when Nezuko couldn't step into daylight without being destroyed. This fundamental vulnerability forced demons to operate only at night, creating the temporal battlefield that gave humans their only consistent advantage. Muzan feared sunlight above all else, his millennia-long existence dedicated to overcoming this weakness. The blue spider lily he desperately sought was rumored to grant immunity. Regardless of how powerful a demon became, the sun would destroy them with absolute certainty. The sacrifice theme found its most powerful expression in Kyojuro Rengoku's death during the Mugen train arc. His final battle against Akaza demonstrated what it meant to embody the Demon Slayer course values completely, fighting beyond human limits to protect 200 passengers, even when victory was impossible. His refusal to become a demon represented the fundamental divide between demons who sought power without purpose and humans who found meaning in protecting others despite mortality. His declaration that growing old and dying gave human life its value established the philosophical foundation that made the core struggle meaningful. His final words to Tanjiro about setting hearts ablaze became the driving force behind Tanjiro's continued mission. Hashira techniques and teamwork showcased throughout all seasons demonstrated the peak of human capability when pushed to absolute limits. Each Hashira mastered their breathing style to create techniques far exceeding normal demon slayers, their individual specializations covering different tactical needs. Their coordination when working together amplified their effectiveness exponentially, covering each other's weaknesses and creating combined strategies that leveraged their diverse abilities. 4 months had passed since the Kill Squad's failure, and the war had reached its breaking point. The resistance existed in scattered fragments, numbers dwindling weekly as Demon Hashira patrols systematically eliminated safe houses. Yet hope burned brighter than ever because Tanjiro's survival of 3 Demon Hashira encounters had proven the impossible. The Fallen could be reached, human consciousness could surface through demonic corruption, and Muzan's blood curse wasn't absolute. Intelligence from Demon Shinobu's coded notes combined with observations of Demon Rengoku, Demon Mitsuri, Demon Obanai, and Demon Gyome's subtle resistances painted a clear picture. 6 of the 9 Demon Hashira showed internal conflict, with 4 demonstrating active sabotage, suggesting their human convictions could override demonic programming when properly triggered. Strategic analysis by Tanjiro's mentor calculated they had perhaps 6 weeks before complete extinction. But they also possessed unprecedented intelligence about Demon Hashira's psychological vulnerabilities, knowledge purchased with hundreds of lives. The mentor calculated that successfully breaking through 3 or 4 Demon Hashira simultaneously during a single coordinated operation might create enough disruption in Muzan's control network to shift the war's momentum. Success probability hovered around 5%, but that was infinitely better than 0. Tanjiro's body bore accumulated damage from 4 months fighting at the edge of human capability. His left shoulder had reduced range of motion from Demon Mitsuri's threads, his ribs showed stress fractures from Demon Rengoku's flames, and his right leg had nerve damage from Demon Tenjin's explosives. The mentor warned that one more confrontation with multiple Demon Hashira would likely kill him, but Tanjiro understood that without dramatic intervention, humanity would be extinct before he died of injuries anyway. Target selection balanced breakthrough probability against tactical positioning. Demon Rengoku represented highest priority due to his previous breakthrough and continued deliberate failures. Demon Guillaume's active resistance during the Kill Squad hunt elevated him to equal priority, his Buddhist faith providing an anchor powerful enough for substantial sabotage. Demon Mitsuri showed continued emotional instability, suggesting her consciousness remained close to the surface. Demon Obanai had been coordinating with Demon Mitsuri, their romantic connection strengthening both their resistances. The plan required luring 4 Demon Hashira to a single location, which would draw Muzan's immediate attention. The resistance needed to create a threat significant enough that Muzan deployed overwhelming force. The chosen site was the ruins of the former Demon Slayer Corps headquarters, positioned to maximize tactical advantage of approaching sunrise. The resistance spent 2 weeks preparing the battlefield with every trap and defensive position their remaining resources could create, while leaking Tanjiro's location through monitored channels. The bait worked better than anticipated because Muzan's rage had festered into obsession. He deployed 6 Demon Hashira to ensure absolute success: Demon Rengoku, Demon Guillaume, Demon Mitsuri, Demon Obanai, Demon Shinobu, and Demon Giyu, with orders to eliminate every human without exception. Demon Sanemi, Demon Tengen, and Demon Muichiro were held in reserve. This concentration of force should have been overkill but played directly into the Resistance's gambit. The Demon Hashira arrived at dusk, their combined presence making the air feel heavy. Tanjiro stood at the center, surrounded by 200 Resistance fighters, representing nearly half humanity's remaining combat capability. The Demon Hashira formed a perfect encirclement. For several seconds, nobody moved, the weight of 4 months culminating in this decisive moment. Tanjiro stepped forward and began speaking, his voice amplified by sun breathing, to carry clearly to all 6 Demon Hashira simultaneously. His words were calculated to strike at each of their specific psychological vulnerabilities. He addressed Demon Rengoku about Senjuro and Shinjuro, how his brother still believed he'd come home and how his father had stopped drinking to train again. He spoke about the 200 people Rengoku protected on the Mugen train and how that act inspired an entire generation. Demon Rengoku's flames flickered and dimmed. He'd been fighting Muzan's control for 4 months, the previous breakthrough, creating a crack he'd been quietly widening. The reminder of his family and those he'd saved provided the ammunition his consciousness needed. The flames shifted from demonic red-yellow to cleaner, brighter gold, his eyes clearing to show genuine recognition and horror. Tanjiro shifted to Demon Guillaume, speaking about Buddhist philosophy and how all beings possessed Buddha nature, including demons, that redemption was always possible because the capacity for change existed in every soul. He spoke about every trainee Guillaume had trained, how his compassionate teaching had saved their lives. Demon Guillaume's prayers intensified into audible chanting, Buddhist sutras flowing with increasing conviction. His faith had never wavered, serving as an unshakable anchor. The reminder that redemption remained possible addressed his deepest fear that he'd done too much evil. His massive form began to glow with faint golden light as if his Buddha nature was manifesting, tears flowing faster but now tears of relief. Tanjiro turned to Demon Mitsuri and Demon Obanai simultaneously, addressing them as the couple they'd never gotten to be. He spoke about Obanai's self-loathing and how Mitsuri loved him for who he chose to be. He described the green stockings Obanai had given her, showing he appreciated her uniqueness. He emphasized their love represented the fundamental human connection demons couldn't experience. Demon Mitsuri began sobbing, her love breathing creating pink energy patterns shifting between corruption and clean manifestation. Her gentle nature had been screaming for 4 months every time she was forced to harm someone. The validation that her love was real and important gave her emotions the strength to override demonic instincts. Demon Obanai reached for her hand, their bond providing reinforcement that amplified both their resistances. Tanjiro addressed Demon Shinobu about Kane and how her sister's dream lived on through Shinobu's medical work. He acknowledged her coded research notes and how her scientific brilliance had been the invisible foundation enabling every breakthrough. He emphasized her smile, hiding hatred proved human complexity, that demons were simple creatures while humans contained multitudes. Demon Shinobu's smile finally cracked. Her scientific mind had been analyzing the blood curse for 4 months, documenting every moment Muzan's control wavered. The acknowledgement that her work mattered validated 4 months of suffering and gave her intellectual framework permission to become emotional conviction. Tanjiro concluded with Demon Giyu, speaking about Sabito's sacrifice and how Giyu's survivor's guilt had driven him to protect others despite believing he didn't deserve his position. He emphasized Sabito would have wanted Giyu to live fully and protect others rather than drown in guilt. Demon Giyu's dead calm manifested involuntarily, creating perfect stillness as his consciousness surged forward with quiet intensity. His guilt had made him vulnerable to demonic despair. The reminder that Sabito would have wanted him to fight provided the framework his reserved personality needed. The breakthrough cascade happened across all 6 Demon Hashira simultaneously, but Muzan's awareness descended like crushing weight, flooding through the blood connection, attempting to suppress 6 rebellions at once. Black veins spread across every body as the curse activated with intensity that should have killed them, screams echoing as Muzan's fury manifested. But the resistance hadn't prepared for nothing. Tanjiro's mentor signaled, triggering every trap simultaneously. Wisteria poison bombs created toxic clouds, weakening regeneration. Blessed Nichiren fragments launched from spring traps, and 200 fighters charged forward. The chaotic assault prevented Demon Hashira from focusing solely on fighting Muzan's control. Demon Rengoku broke free first, his conviction combining with 4 months of resistance to sever Muzan's control. His flames exploded in golden conflagration, announcing liberation, his voice ringing with encouraging warmth as he declared his heart was set ablaze. He immediately engaged the 3 reserve Demon Hashira. Demon Gyomei broke free seconds later, his Buddhist faith providing framework Muzan's curse couldn't overcome. The golden glow intensified into brilliant radiance, his prayers shifting from begging forgiveness to declaring determination to protect all beings. His stone breathing created defensive barriers shielding resistance fighters. Demon Mitsuri and Demon Obanai achieved breakthrough simultaneously through mutual support. Mitsuri's gentle nature reasserted with overwhelming force, her love breathing shifting to pure pink energy. Obanai's self-loathing transformed into protective fury at Muzan for corrupting the woman he loved. They moved as one coordinated unit. Demon Shinobu's breakthrough manifested through intellectual framework. She recognized at molecular level how Muzan's curse functioned and identified the vectors allowing consciousness to override programming. This understanding let her consciously manipulate her own demon blood, using her expertise to poison Muzan's control from within. Demon Giyu's breakthrough was quietest but no less significant. His reserved nature made liberation almost invisible until suddenly he stood among resistance fighters using dead calm to protect them. His water breathing flowed with perfect mastery, unmarred by corruption. The battle erupting was unlike anything seen since the original Hashira's peak. 6 liberated Demon Hashira fought 3 corrupted ones, while 200 fighters provided support, and Muzan's consciousness tried desperately to reassert control. Demon Rengoku's golden flames clashed against Demon Sanemi's wind blades, shouting about Genya and how Sanemi's protectiveness had always been driven by love. Muzan's fury reached critical mass. He couldn't allow this rebellion because if 6 Demon Hashira could break free, potentially any demon might achieve liberation. His presence manifested directly on the battlefield, possessing Demon Sanemi's body to speak with his own voice. Muzan's intervention shifted dynamics catastrophically. His millennium of experience turned Demon Sanemi into an avatar of destruction, exceeding anything the Wind Hashira could achieve alone. He deployed psychological warfare, targeting their vulnerabilities. But Muzan's direct presence meant he wasn't paying attention to Demon Tenjin and Demon Muichiro. Demon Tenjin's calculating mind recognized that Muzan's obsession created vulnerability, that pride wouldn't allow retreat. The shinobi concluded betraying Muzan, while his attention divided offered better survival odds than remaining loyal. Demon Muichiro's memory issues meant brief, lucid moments. In the chaos with Muzan's consciousness divided, one moment lasted long enough to hear Tanjiro shouting about Yuichiro. The memory pierced the fog, and his mist breathing shifted to creating cover, obscuring Muzan's vision. The eastern sky showed first hints of pre-dawn gray. Every demon felt the approaching sunrise like approaching doom. The Resistance's timing forced this exact situation. Muzan recognized the trap, his pride having driven him to commit to a battle that was always racing against daylight. He had perhaps 20 minutes before sunrise destroyed any demon still exposed. Muzan faced brutal calculation: stay and risk annihilation, or retreat and abandon 9 demon Hashira to die in sunlight. Self-preservation 1. Muzan's consciousness withdrew as he severed the blood connection to all 9 simultaneously. The severance came with final curse, commanding their bodies to destroy everything until sunrise killed them. But severing the connection meant severing control. For the first time in 4 months, the demon Hashira were free to make their own choices. The curse's lingering effects tried forcing Berserker Rampage, but 6 had achieved breakthrough and resisted. They weren't fast enough to prevent some damage as bodies moved against will for seconds, but regained control before fighters died. Demon Sanemi, Demon Tenjin, and Demon Muichiro had more difficulty. Demon Sanemi entered full berserker state, wind breathing, creating devastating tornadoes. But Demon Rengoku and Demon Gyome engaged him, their combined power containing his rampage while shouting about Genya. The words penetrated because that protective instinct was fundamental to his identity. He stopped entirely, tears streaming as he recognized what he'd become. Demon Tenjin required logical arguments. Demon Shinobu explained with clinical precision that Muzan had abandoned them to die, that survival required working with the resistance to reach shelter before dawn. The tactical logic was irrefutable. He stood down and offered cooperation in exchange for help finding his 3 wives. Demon Muichiro's memory issues meant he kept forgetting and reverting to last orders. Demon Giyu used dead calm to restrain him without harm, speaking quietly about Yuichiro. The repetition and gentle restraint created enough lucidity that Muichiro's consciousness could surface. Sunrise was minutes away and all 9 demon Hashira were still exposed, bodies already smoking as earliest rays touched the peaks. The resistance had prepared underground shelters, but reaching them required crossing 200 meters of open ground. Demon Rengoku decided immediately. He used his flames to create a burning corridor that paradoxically shielded others from direct sunlight through heat distortion and smoke, his body taking the worst burning so others could reach shelter. Demon Gyome joined him, using stone breathing to raise earth walls while his massive body shielded smaller demon, Hashira. The 2 strongest formed rearguard, ensuring everyone reached underground shelters. But the cost was severe. Demon Rengoku and Demon Gyome took catastrophic burning damage from prolonged sunlight exposure, exceeding regeneration's capacity. By the time they reached shelter, they were barely conscious, bodies charred and smoking. Demon Shinobu immediately began triage, her expertise stabilizing them. The aftermath in the underground shelter was surreal, as humans and demons who'd been trying to kill each other now occupied the same space working towards survival. 9 demon Hashira, who'd spent 4 months as Muzan's weapons, were now free but still demons with all the physical needs and psychological trauma that entailed. They retained memories of everything they'd done, 4 months of atrocities, creating damage that would take years to process. But they were free. And that freedom represented the first genuine hope humanity had possessed since the Hashira's fall. 9 demon Hashira with retained breathing techniques and combat experience, now working to protect humanity rather than destroy it, shifted the strategic balance dramatically. They couldn't walk in sunlight and couldn't eat normal food, but they could fight other demons with overwhelming advantage and provide intelligence about Muzan's operations that no human possessed. The war had entered its final phase with the board completely reset. Muzan had lost his 9 most powerful weapons and been forced to reveal limitations in his control. The demon Hashira existed in unprecedented state as demons fighting for humanity. The resistance had achieved the impossible breakthrough they'd gambled everything on, but their conventional combat capability was shattered, and they depended entirely on demon Hashira protection to survive. The psychological proof that demons could reclaim their humanity created possibility that other demons might be reached and turned, potentially fracturing Muzan's entire power structure. Tanjiro lay in the shelter, recovering from injuries that should have been fatal. His mentor explained gently that his direct combat role was finished, that he'd accomplished the impossible by triggering the breakthrough cascade. But Tanjiro's mission wasn't complete because Nezuko remained a demon searching for the cure, continuing her lonely struggle to maintain humanity. The final chapter would require different tactics than direct combat, strategic coordination between humans and reformed demon Hashira to locate and destroy Muzan before he could rebuild. The sunrise continued rising over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant gold and red, symbolizing both destruction and hope. In the underground shelter, 9 demons, who'd once been humanity's strongest protectors and who'd spent 4 months as its worst nightmares, began the long, difficult process of learning to be human again despite their demonic bodies. They couldn't undo the past, but they could choose differently going forward and dedicate whatever time remained toward protecting the humans they'd once hunted. The war wasn't over, and victory wasn't certain. But for the first time in 4 months, humanity possessed genuine hope that went beyond survival to encompass actual possibility of winning. That hope burned as brightly as Rengoku's flames and as enduringly as Gyome's faith, an unbreakable conviction that even in the darkest timeline, human hearts set ablaze could illuminate the path to victory. That's it for today. If you enjoyed our video, subscribe to our channel and I'll see you in the next video.